Thrive. The third metric to redefining success and creating a life of well-being, wisdom, and wonder. Arianna Huffington. Well-being. For a long time it had seemed to me that life was about to begin. Real life. But there was always some obstacle in the way. Something to be got through first, some unfinished business, time still to be served, a debt to be paid. Then life would begin. At last it dawned on me that these obstacles were my life. FAR Alfred de Souza. A new blueprint. Time to renovate the architecture of our lives. Nothing succeeds like excess, we are told. If a little of something is good, more must be better. So working 80 hours a week must be better than working 40. And being plugged in 24/7 is assumed to be a standard requirement of every job worth having today, which means that getting by on less sleep and constant multitasking is an express elevator to the top in today's work world. Right? The time has come to re-examine these assumptions. When we do, it becomes clear that the price we are paying for this way of thinking and living is far too high and unsustainable. The architecture of how we live our lives is badly in need of renovation and repair. What we really value is out of sync with how we live our lives, and the need is urgent for some new blueprints to reconcile the two. In Plato's Apology, Socrates defines his life's mission as awakening the Athenians to the supreme importance of attending to their souls. His timeless plea that we connect to ourselves remains the only way for any of us to truly thrive. Too many of us leave our lives, and in fact, our souls behind when we go to work. This is the guiding truth of the well-being section, and indeed, of this entire book. Growing up in Athens, I remember being taught in my classics class that, as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Philosophy for the Greeks was not an academic exercise. It was a way of life, a daily practice in the art of living. My mother never went to college, but she would still preside over long sessions in our small kitchen in Athens, discussing the principles and teachings of Greek philosophy to help guide my sister, Agape, and me in our decisions and our choices. Our current notion of success, in which we drive ourselves into the ground, if not the grave, in which working to the point of exhaustion and burnout considered a badge of honor, was put in place by men, in a workplace culture dominated by men. But it's a model of success that's not working for women, and really it's not working for men either. If we're going to redefine what success means, if we are going to include a third metric to success, beyond money and power, it's going to be women who will lead the way, and men, freed of the notion that the only road to success includes taking the heart attack highway to Stress City, will gratefully join both at work and at home. This is our third women's revolution. The first women's revolution was led by the suffragettes more than 100 years ago, when courageous women such as Susan B. Anthony, Emmeline Pankhurst, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton fought to get women the right to vote. The second was led by Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, who fought, and Gloria continues to fight, to expand the role of women in our society and give them full access to the rooms and corridors of power where decisions are made. This second revolution is still very much in progress, as it needs to be, but we simply can't wait any longer for the third revolution to get underway. That's because women are paying an even higher price than men for their participation in a work culture fueled by stress, sleep deprivation, and burnout. That is one reason why so many talented women, with impressive degrees working in high-powered jobs, end up abandoning their careers when they can afford to. Let me count the ways in which these personal costs are unsustainable. As mentioned in the "but it is so important it bears repeating," women in highly stressful jobs have a nearly 40% increased risk of heart disease and heart attacks compared with their less stressed colleagues, and a 60% greater risk for type 2 diabetes, a link that does not exist for men, by the way. Women who have heart attacks are almost twice as likely as men to die within a year of the attack, and women in high-stress jobs are more likely to become alcoholics than women in low-stress jobs. Stress and pressure from high-powered careers can also be a factor in the resurgence of eating disorders in women ages 35 to 60. Most of the time, the discussion about the challenges of women at the top centers around the difficulty of navigating a career and children, of having it all. It's time we recognize that, as the workplace is currently structured, A lot of women don't want to get to the top and stay there because they don't want to pay the price, in terms of their health, their well-being, and their happiness. When women do leave high-powered jobs, the debate is largely taken over by the binary stay-at-home mom versus the independent career woman question. But in fact, when women at the top, or near enough, opt out, it's not just because of the kids, even though that's sometimes what takes the place of the job they've left, and the full reasons why they're leaving also have implications for men. Caroline Turner, author of Difference Works, Improving Retention, Productivity, and Profitability Through Inclusion, was one of those women at the top. After successfully climbing the corporate ladder, she decided to get off. And it wasn't because of her children who were grown. "I lacked the passion it took to keep it up," she writes. Once she left, she realized she had new colleagues of a sort. "I began to notice how much company I had as a former successful woman executive," she writes. "I began to reflect on what really caused me to leave." What she found was research that showed that, yes, childcare and elder care were cited most often as the reasons women left. But after those, the motivation most often given was lack of engagement or enjoyment in the job. And of course, none of the three reasons are exclusive. If a woman doesn't really like her job, she may be less willing or able to juggle work and family responsibilities, Turner writes. If she is fully engaged in her work, the juggling act may be worthwhile. So what often looks from the outside like a simple choice to quit and take care of the children can actually be more complicated. Children are a formidable option. Time spent with them can be meaningful and engaging. And if the career alternative ceases to be meaningful or engaging, some women who are able to will take the former. In fact, 43% of women who have children will quit their jobs at some point. Around 3/4 of them will return to the workforce, but only 40% will go back to working full-time. As Turner writes, for women to be engaged in the workplace, they need to feel valued. And the way many workplaces are set up, masculine ways of succeeding fueled by stress and burnout, are often accorded more value. Take Wall Street, for example, where Roseanne Palmieri worked for 25 years, becoming a managing director at Merrill Lynch. Suddenly, in 2010, she came to a realization. I'm at the table. I've made it. I've networked. I've clawed. I've said yes. I've said no. I've put in all this time and effort, and I was underwhelmed. What I was getting back was not acceptable to me. You're not your bank account or your ambitiousness. You're not the cold clay lump with a big belly you leave behind when you die. You're not your collection of walking personality disorders. Your spirit. Your love. Afi Lamont. Likewise, after getting a master's in education at Harvard and an MBA at Wharton, Paulette Light had a successful career in management consulting. 10 weeks after her daughter was born, she was back at work. I was an exhausted, nervous wreck, she writes. Her company tried to be flexible to keep her, telling her to just get the job done however she could. But that was the problem, she writes. Getting the job done was all about giving everything to the job. So she quit and had 3 more children. But leaving the business world did not mean leaving behind achievement and accomplishment. Far from it. In the time since, she's started a preschool, co-founded a synagogue, and launched an internet startup, momstamp.com, focused on making moms' lives easier. She's also been surveying the work landscape for ways in which the doors to the business world could be more two-way and allow for the talents and skills of those who have chosen alternative paths to be put to use. A healthy economy isn't just about the efficient allocation of capital, but of talent as well. As more and more people, both men and women, begin to choose not to work themselves into the ground, it's important that humane pathways back to the workforce be created so their skills are not lost. One idea is to expand the project-based world, where businesses simply give a skilled worker a project and a deadline. If you want high-achieving mothers back in the workforce, Light writes, don't give us an office and a work week filled with FaceTime. Give us something to get done and tell us when you need it by. And it's not just women with children who are looking for an alternative. After graduating from college, Kate Sheehan quickly worked her way up in communications, and by 27 was a speechwriter for the CEO of a large finance company. But 7 years of 12-hour days later, she began to have second thoughts about where she was going. It wasn't the answers that were changing for her, but the questions. It's not, what do I want to do? It's what kind of life do I want to have, she says. Her answer made her realize she had to make some changes. I do not try to dance better than anyone else. I only try to dance better than myself. Mikhail Barishvikov? So she moved to Cape Cod and started a communications consulting business. There was something about being on Cape Cod. I was inspired by the people around me, in this beautiful geography, who were making it work, she says. I started to think I could make a more independent path work for me as well. I felt inspired by the natural surroundings, by being close to the ocean where I grew up. Emotionally, mentally, and physically, I had more space to create. There are a lot of women doing what I'm doing, she says, but they're doing it 15, 20 years later. I don't want to be someone who, 15 years from now, has horrible health problems and who hasn't created a life that feels really meaningful to me. According to a Forbes Woman survey, an amazing 84% of working women say that staying at home to raise kids is a financial luxury they aspire to. This says just as much about the fulfillment we're getting from our work as it does about our love of our no doubt adorable children. Burnout, our civilization's disease. Belgian philosopher Pascal Chabot calls burnout civilization's disease. It's certainly symptomatic of our modern age. It is not only an individual disorder that affects some who are ill-suited to the system, or too committed, or who don't know how to put limits to their professional lives, he writes. It is also a disorder that, like a mirror, reflects some excessive values of our society. Marie Asperg, professor at the Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, describes burnout as an exhaustion funnel. We slip down as we give up things we don't think are important. Often, the very first things we give up are those that nourish us the most but seem optional, write Mark Williams and Danny Penman. In Mindfulness, an 8-week plan for finding peace in a frantic world. The result is that we are increasingly left with only work or other stressors that often deplete our resources, and nothing to replenish or nourish us, and exhaustion is the result. If I were called upon to state in a few words the essence of everything I was trying to say, both as a novelist and as a preacher, it would be something like this. Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is. In the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. Frederica Buchfer. Another result of our current toxic definition of success is an epidemic of addiction. More than 22 million people in the United States are using illegal drugs. More than 12 million are using prescription painkillers without a medical reason, and almost 9 million need prescription sleep aids to go to sleep. And the percentage of adults taking antidepressants has gone up 400% since 1988. Burnout, stress, and depression have become worldwide epidemics. And as we found out when we held a third metric conference in London in the summer of 2013, and then one in Munich in the fall, the need to redefine success is a global need. In the United Kingdom, prescriptions for antidepressants have gone up 495% since 1991. In Europe, from 1995 to 2009, the use of antidepressants went up by nearly 20% per year, and the health consequences of stress are increasingly documented around the world. According to a Danish study, women who described work-related pressures as a little too high faced a 25% increased risk of heart disease. As June Davison, a nurse at the British Heart Foundation, cautioned, feeling under pressure at work means stressed employees may pick up some unhealthy bad habits and add to their risk of developing heart problems. In Germany, more than 40% of workers say that their jobs have become more stressful in the past 2 years. Germany lost 59 million workdays to psychological illness in 2011, up over 80% in 15 years. When she was the German labor minister, Ursula von der Leyen, now Germany's defense minister, estimated that burnout is costing the country up to 10 billion euros per year. Nothing is more expensive than sending a good worker into retirement in their mid-40s because they're burned out, she said. These cases are no longer just the exception. It's a trend that we have to do something about. In China, according to a 2012 survey, 75% of Chinese workers said their stress levels have risen in the previous year. versus a global average of 48%. According to a Harvard Medical School study, an astounding 96% of leaders said they felt burned out. In fact, one of the legal defenses offered by Steve Cohen, CEO of SAC Capital, the hedge fund that was indicted in 2013 and agreed to a record $1.2 billion fine, was that he missed a warning about insider trading because of the 1,000 emails he gets every day. There is a price to pay for that kind of daily deluge. After less than a year as CEO of Lloyd's Banking Group, Antonio Horta Osorio took a 2-month leave in 2011. Lloyd's chairman, Sir Winfried Bischoff, blamed overwork, lack of sleep. Upon his return, Horta Osorio said, "With the benefit of hindsight, I should have gone a bit slower." And in October 2013, Hector Sanz, head of compliance at Barclays, took a leave of absence. A month later, he quit his job entirely after being diagnosed with exhaustion and stress. The word stress was first used in its modern sense in 1936 by physician Hans Selye. It means the body's nonspecific response to an external demand, as immunologist Esther Sternberg put it in her book, Healing Spaces. The ancient Romans used a word with a similar meaning, stringere, to squeeze tight, graze, touch, or injure. When the word entered the English language in the 14th century, it continued to refer to physical hardships of the environment. By the 19th century, the word had begun to take on a meaning combining the environment's physical effects with the body's responses to them. Then, in 1934, physiologist Walter B. Cannon showed that animals produce adrenaline in response to such stressors. This was indeed the first proof that the physical environment could trigger a bodily response. Selye took the concept one step further, showing that many other hormones were produced in response to stress, and that these could have lasting physical consequences on the body. What produces stress in our bodies is deeply subjective. It's as if stress is always floating around looking for something, or someone, to land on. And it often lands on completely trivial and insignificant things. We only realize how trivial and insignificant they are, and unworthy of our attention, let alone our stress over them, when something truly significant intrudes upon our routine. The loss of a loved one, sickness, a health scare. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. William James. I remember when we had just moved to Washington. I was completely preoccupied with decorating our new home, getting our 2 young children into new schools, responding to my editor's queries on a manuscript I had just sent in, and organizing a birthday dinner. In the middle of all this, I drove to Georgetown Hospital for a routine physical exam. When I arrived at the hospital, I moved mindlessly through my exam, silently processing my to-do list while a nurse took my blood pressure. The doctor was in, then out, then in again. At some point, it occurred to me that she was speaking with unusual seriousness. I think she caught my attention with the word lump. It needed to come out as soon as possible. One of the problems with my philosophy of assuming the best until told the worst is that when I had first noticed the lump at home, I assumed it was just a harmless cyst. It had happened before, no problem. But now the doctor was using words such as biopsy and surgery, and telling me the lump would not aspirate, that she could get no fluid from it and wanted to get it out right away. I felt myself beginning to black out, and I asked if I could lie on the examination table while she explained what this meant. As if through a thick fog, I heard the doctor talking about how long it takes to get lab results after surgery, and that she always likes her patients to come to her office to review the results and discuss alternatives in person. In an instant, deadlines were disappearing and priorities recalculated. A week after my surgery, we got the results. The lump was benign. It had been a long week full of what-ifs, a week that brought home one great truth about life: the ease with which the big crises can wipe out the small ones that seemed so critical just a moment before. All of our small anxieties and trivial preoccupations evaporate with the sudden recognition of what really matters. We are reminded of the impermanence of much that we assume is forever, and the value of so much we take for granted. Again and again, all around the world, it often takes a personal health crisis to get us to pay attention. That moment came for the former president of Google China, Li Kai-fu, in the fall of 2013 when he was diagnosed with cancer. Li told his 50 million followers on Sina Weibo, a Chinese social media network, that he had decided to change his life. I naively used to compete with others to see who could sleep less. I made fighting to the death a personal motto. It's only now, when I'm suddenly faced with possibly losing 30 years of life, that I've been able to calm down and reconsider. That sort of persistence may have been a mistake. His new plan: sleep enough, adjust my diet, and start exercising again. And every day the world will drag you by the hand, yelling, "This is important, and this is important, and this is important. You need to worry about this, and this, and this." And each day, it's up to you to yank your hand back, put it on your heart, and say, "No, this is what's important." Life Thomas. Healthy employees, healthy bottom lines. Looking at the Western workplace today, we see two very different and competing worlds. In one world, we see a clear manifestation of the burnout disorder. A business culture single-mindedly obsessed with quarterly earnings reports, maximizing short-term profits, and beating growth expectations. In the other world, we see an increasing recognition of the effects workplace stress can have on the well-being of employees and on a company's bottom line. There is growing evidence that the long-term health of a company's bottom line and the health of its employees are, in fact, very much aligned, and that when we treat them as separate, we pay a heavy price both personally and collectively. Individually, we compromise our health and happiness. For businesses, the costs will be exacted in dollars and cents, talent retention, and diminished productivity. But the reverse is also true. What's good for us as individuals is also good for businesses and for countries. And sick care is a lot more expensive than real health care. The World Economic Forum, held in Davos, Switzerland, each year and typically associated with finding solutions to the big economic problems facing us, is a kind of weather vane for ideas being embraced by political and business leaders around the world. In 2013, and even more so in 2014, it was clear from the multiple sessions devoted to mindful leadership, meditation, neuroscientific findings, and even rethinking living that the powers that be are beginning to accept the connection between our ability to deal with the crises that surround us and the way we live our lives and care for our bodies, minds, and spirit. The plenary session I moderated in January 2014 was entitled "Health is Wealth," referencing the health of individuals, companies, and countries alike. Studies show that U.S. employers spend 200 to 300% more on the indirect costs of healthcare, in the form of absenteeism, sick days, and lower productivity than they do on actual healthcare payments. In the United Kingdom, stress results in 105 million lost workdays each year. No wonder Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter recommends that companies mount an aggressive approach to wellness, prevention, screening, and active management of chronic conditions. The voice of sanity is getting louder in our burned-out world, challenging the conventional wisdom that during hard times you cut employees' healthcare benefits. Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, faced such pressure from investors during Starbucks' less profitable years. But he did not give in. At age 7, Schultz had watched his father get fired from his job as a driver for a diaper delivery service after slipping on a sheet of ice at work, breaking his hip and ankle. His father was sent home without health care coverage, workers' compensation, or severance. During Starbucks' earlier years, Schultz was adamant about expanding healthcare coverage to include part-timers who worked as little as 20 hours a week, unheard of in the late 1980s. 2 decades later, during the company's toughest financial period, Schultz stood fast, refusing to cut those benefits despite the urging of investors. Schultz sees the benefits plan not as a generous optional benefit, but as a core strategy. Treat people like family, and they will be loyal and give their all. It's this principle that led to the creation of Beanstalk, the company's employee stock option plan, which turned Starbucks employees into partners. Too many companies don't yet realize the benefits of focusing on wellness. The lack of attention to employee needs helps explain why the United States spends more on healthcare than other countries but gets worse outcomes, says Jeffrey Pfeffer, professor at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. We have no mandatory vacation or sick day requirements, and we do have chronic layoffs, overwork, and stress. Working in many organizations is simply hazardous to your health. I hope businesses will wake up to the fact that if they don't do well by their employees, chances are they're not doing well, period. One company that did wake up to the importance of employee health was Safeway. The supermarket chain's former CEO Steve Bird recounts that in 2005, Safeway's healthcare bill hit $1 billion and was going up by $100 million a year. What we discovered was that 70% of healthcare costs are driven by people's behaviors, he says. Now, as a business guy, I thought if we could influence the behavior of our 200,000 person workforce, we could have a material effect on healthcare costs. So Safeway offered incentives for employees to lose weight and control their blood pressure and cholesterol levels. It established a baseline health insurance premium with behavior-based discounts. As Bird explained, if you are a confirmed non-smoker, we give you a discount. If you have cholesterol under control, a discount. Blood pressure under control, a discount. And so behavior becomes a form of currency for people to accomplish their lifestyle changes. And it was a huge success. You allow and encourage your employees to become healthier, they become more productive, your company becomes more competitive, Bird says. I can't think of a single negative in doing this. Making money and doing good in the world are not mutually exclusive. Esther Sternberg explains that healing is a verb. The body is constantly repairing itself. That's what life is. You know, a rock just sits there and it eventually gets into sand or mud or something as the elements affect it. But a living being is constantly repairing itself against all of these different insults at a very molecular level, at a cellular level, at an emotional level. So disease happens when the repair process is not keeping up with the damage process. Right now, in the majority of our companies and the majority of our lives, the repair process is not keeping up with the damage process. But there are many different paths to well-being, and in the next few sections we will explore some of them. Meditation. It's not just for enlightenment. Anymore, one of the best and most easily available ways we can become healthier and happier is through mindfulness and meditation. Every element of well-being is enhanced by the practice of meditation, and indeed, studies have shown that mindfulness and meditation have a measurable positive impact on the other three pillars of the third metric: wisdom, wonder, and giving. When I first heard about mindfulness, I was confused. My mind was already full enough, I thought. I needed to empty it, not focus on it. My conception of the mind was sort of like the household junk drawer. Just keep cramming things in and hope it doesn't jam. Then I read Jon Kabat-Zinn's writings on mindfulness and it all made sense. In Asian languages, he wrote, the word for mind and the word for heart are the same word. So when we hear the word mindfulness, we have to inwardly also hear heartfulness in order to grasp it even as a concept, and especially as a way of being. In other words, mindfulness is not just about our minds but our whole beings. When we are all mind, things can get rigid. When we are all heart, things can get chaotic. Both lead to stress. But when they work together, the heart leading through empathy, the mind guiding us with focus and attention, we become a harmonious human being. Through mindfulness, I found a practice that helped bring me fully present and in the moment, even in the most hectic of circumstances. What was the very best moment of your day? Often it's a moment when you're waiting for someone, or you're driving somewhere, or maybe you're just walking diagonally across a parking lot and you're admiring the oil stains and the dribbled tar patterns. One time, it was when I was driving past a certain house that was screaming with sunlitness on its white clapboards, and then I plunged through tree shadows that splashed and splayed over the windshield. Nicholsoft Bauer, Mark Williams, and Danny Penman give a variety of quick and easy ways to practice mindfulness, including what they call habit breaking. Each day for a week, you choose a habit such as brushing your teeth, drinking your morning coffee, or taking a shower, and simply pay attention to what's happening while you do it. It's really not so much habit breaking as habit unmaking. It's taking something we've placed on autopilot and putting it back on the list of things we pay attention to. The idea, they write, is not to make you feel different, but simply to allow a few more moments in the day when you are awake. If you notice your mind wandering while you do this, simply notice where it went, then gently escort it back to the present moment. I love the image of gently escorting my mind back to the present moment. without any negative judgment that it wandered. It will, no doubt, be a familiar process for anybody who has parented or babysat a toddler, which is not a bad comparison for our modern multitasking minds. As for meditation, it has long been an important part of my life. My mother had actually taught my younger sister Agapi and me how to meditate when I was 13 years old. But although I've known its benefits since my teens, finding time for meditation was always a challenge because I was under the impression that I had to do meditation. And I didn't have time for another burdensome thing to do. Fortunately, a friend pointed out one day that we don't do meditation. Meditation does us. That opened the door for me. The only thing to do in meditation is nothing. Even writing that I don't have to do one more thing makes me relax. You wander from room to room, hunting for the diamond necklace that is already around your neck. Rumi. I've found that meditation can actually be done in very short windows of time, even while on the move. We think of ourselves as breathing, but in reality, we are being breathed. At any time we choose, we can take a moment to bring our attention to the rising and falling of our breath without our conscious interference. And I know when I have connected, because I usually take a spontaneous deep breath or release a deep sigh. So, in a sense, the engine of mindfulness is always going. To reap the benefits of it, all we have to do is become present and pay attention. Our breath also has a sacredness about it. Sometimes when I'm giving a talk, I'll first ask everyone in the room to focus on the rising and falling of their breath for 10 seconds. It's amazing how the room, which moments before hummed with chaotic energy, will suddenly be filled with a stillness, an attentiveness, a sacredness. It's something quite palpable. There are many forms of meditation, but whichever form you choose, it's important to remember that its benefits are only a breath away, and the only price we pay is a few moments of our attention. My sister, Agapi, has always been a natural on all matters spiritual, and has been my guide throughout our lives, sending books and people my way, nudging my spiritual explorations, calling to wake me up at a hotel in Kalamazoo, Michigan, at 5 in the morning so I could have time to meditate before another grueling book tour day began. It made us more peaceful and less upset when things didn't go our way, but we also realized that it made us happier. And now, science has provided evidence to back this all up. If anything, my mother was underselling the benefits of meditation. Science has caught up to ancient wisdom, and the results are overwhelming and unambiguous. What study after study shows is that meditation and mindfulness training profoundly affect every aspect of our lives: our bodies, our minds, our physical health, and our emotional and spiritual well-being. It's not quite the fountain of youth, but it's pretty close. When you consider all the benefits of meditation, and more are being found every day, it's not an exaggeration to call meditation a miracle drug. First, let's look at physical health. It's hard to overstate what meditation can do for us here, and the medical uses for it are just beginning to be explored. Science. The same reductionistic science that is used to evaluate various drugs and medical procedures has proven that your mind can heal your body. Herbert Benson and William Proctor write in their book Relaxation Revolution. Indeed, the authors recommend that mind-body science be considered as the third primary treatment option in medicine, right along with surgery and drugs. They write how meditation can impact nausea, diabetes, asthma, skin reactions, ulcers, cough, congestive heart failure, dizziness, post-operative swelling, and anxiety. Because all health conditions have some stress component, the authors conclude, it is no overstatement to say that virtually every single health problem and disease can be improved with a mind-body approach. It's the Swiss Army knife of medical tools for conditions both small and large. A study funded by the National Institutes of Health showed a 23% decrease in mortality in people who meditated versus those who did not, a 30% decrease in death due to cardiovascular problems, and a significant decrease in cancer mortality. This effect is equivalent to discovering an entirely new class of drugs, but without the inevitable side effects. Observe Mark Williams and Danny Penman. Another study found that meditation increased levels of antibodies to the flu vaccine, and the practice was also found to decrease the severity and length of colds, while researchers at Wake Forest University found that meditation lowered pain intensity. How does it do all this? It's not about just distracting us from pain and stress. It literally changes us at the genetic level. Researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and Harvard Medical School found that the relaxation response, the state of calm produced by meditation, yoga, and breathing exercises, actually switched on genes that are related to augmenting our immune system, reducing inflammation, and fighting a range of conditions from arthritis to high blood pressure to diabetes. So with all these results, it's no surprise that, according to another study, meditation correlates to reduced yearly medical costs. Yeah. It also physically changes our brains. One study found that meditation can actually increase the thickness of the prefrontal cortex region of the brain and slow the thinning that occurs there as we age, impacting cognitive functions such as sensory and emotional processing. Dr. Richard Davidson, professor of psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin and a leading scholar on the impact of contemplative practices on the brain, used magnetic resonance imaging machines, MRIs, to study the brain activity of Tibetan monks. The studies, as Davidson put it, have illuminated for the first time the further reaches of human plasticity and transformation. He calls meditation mental training. What we've found is that the trained mind, or brain, is physically different from the untrained one. And when our brain is changed, so is the way in which we experience the world. Meditation is not just blissing out under a mango tree, says a French Buddhist monk and molecular geneticist Mathieu Ricard. It completely changes your brain and therefore changes what you are. And this automatically changes how you respond to what is happening in your life, your level of stress, and your ability to tap into your wisdom when making decisions. You don't learn to sail in stormy seas, Ricard says. You go to a secluded place, not to avoid the world, but to avoid distractions until you build your strength and you can deal with anything. You don't box Muhammad Ali on day one. And the building of your strength, equanimity, and wisdom is actually very tangible and measurable, which is how Mathieu Ricard earned the moniker the happiest man in the world. After placing more than 250 sensors on Ricard's skull, Richard Davidson found that Ricard exhibited gamma wave levels, high-frequency brainwaves, never before reported in the neuroscience literature, indicative of an atypically high capacity for happiness and reduced tendency toward negative thoughts and feelings. As Ricard explains, pleasure depends very much on circumstances, and also it's something that basically doesn't radiate to others. Happiness is a way of being that gives you the resources to deal with the ups and downs of life, that pervades all the emotional states, including sadness. People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. There is nowhere that a person can find a more peaceful and trouble-free retreat than in his own mind. So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. Marcus Aurelius. Meditation can also have profound effects on a host of other psychological conditions. Researchers at UCLA found that mindfulness and meditation helped lower feelings of loneliness among the elderly, while researchers from the University of Michigan documented that military veterans experienced lowered levels of post-traumatic stress disorder after mindfulness training. Meditation has also been found to reduce depression among pregnant women and teens. And it's not just about reducing negative emotions, it's also about boosting positive ones. A study led by University of North Carolina professor Barbara L. Fredrickson found that meditation increased positive emotions, including love, joy, gratitude, contentment, hope, pride, interest, amusement. It also resulted in increases in a variety of personal resources, including mindful attention, self-acceptance, positive relations with others, and good physical health. A study of patients with a history of depression at the University of Cambridge found that mindfulness-based cognitive therapy lowered the risk of depression relapse in participants who had experienced 3 or more episodes from 78 to 36%. Meditation may be a wonder drug, but it does need to be regularly refilled. To get all these benefits, we need to make it a part of our everyday lives. Happiness and well-being are not just magical traits that some are blessed with and others not. Richard Davidson has come to view happiness not as a trait, but as a skill, like tennis. If you want to be a good tennis player, you can't just pick up a racket. You have to practice, he said. We can actually practice to enhance our well-being. Every strand of scientific evidence points in that direction. It's no different than learning to play the violin or play golf. When you practice, you get better at it. And trust me, it's much easier than mastering the violin or becoming a golf pro. Davidson found remarkable results with practitioners who did 50,000 rounds of meditation, but also with 3 weeks of 20 minutes a day, which, of course, is more applicable to our modern times. While meditation may be a solitary activity that involves a certain inward focus, it also increases our ability to connect with others, actually making us more compassionate. Scientists from Harvard and Northeastern universities found that meditation made people willing to act virtuous, to help another who was suffering, even in the face of a norm not to do so. And meditation boosts our creativity. Ideas are like fish, wrote director and longtime meditator David Lynch in his book Catching the Big Fish. If you want to catch little fish, you can stay in the shallow water. But if you want to catch the big fish, you've got to go deeper. Down deep. The fish are more powerful and more pure. They're huge and abstract, and they're very beautiful. Steve Jobs, a lifelong practitioner of meditation, affirmed the connection between meditation and creativity. If you just sit and observe, you will see how restless your mind is. If you try to calm it, it only makes it worse, but over time it does calm. And when it does, there's room to hear more subtle things. That's when your intuition starts to blossom and you start to see things more clearly and be in the present more. Your mind just slows down, and you see a tremendous expanse in the moment. You see so much more than you could see before. Meditation can help us not only focus, but also refocus after being distracted, which is an increasingly common peril of our technology-besieged lives. Giuseppe Pagnoni, a neuroscientist at Emory University, found that after an interruption, the minds of participants who meditated were able to return to what they had been focusing on faster than non-meditators. The regular practice of meditation may enhance the capacity to limit the influence of distracting thoughts, he said. This is especially valuable for those who feel like their days have become a noisy, beeping, blinking obstacle course of distracting thoughts. No wonder mindfulness and meditation are being increasingly adopted by corporations and institutions throughout the world. The Bank of England has offered meditation sessions for its staff, as well as the option to enroll in a self-funded 6-week meditation course. And in the military, while the United States Marine Corps is experimenting with a mind fitness training program, the David Lynch Foundation's Operation Warrior Wellness has helped bring meditation to veterans and armed service personnel and their families, leading to a substantial decrease in PTSD and depression symptoms. No longer is meditation seen as some sort of new age escape from the world. It's increasingly seen for what it is, a practice that helps us be in the world in a way that is more productive, more engaged, healthier, and less stressful. The list of public figures outing themselves as meditators is growing longer every day. It includes Ford Chairman Bill Ford, LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner, Aetna CEO Mark Bertolini, Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff, Twitter co-founder Evan Williams, ABC host George Stephanopoulos, New York Times columnist and CNBC anchor Andrew Ross Sorkin, Jerry Seinfeld, Kenneth Branagh, Oprah Winfrey, whose 21-day meditation experience program with Deepak Chopra has had nearly 2 million participants in more than 200 countries, and Rupert Murdoch, who, in April 2013, tweeted, "Trying to learn transcendental meditation. Everyone recommends, not that easy to get started, but said to improve everything." As Bob Roth, the executive director of the David Lynch Foundation, who has taught meditation to many corporate leaders, recently told me, "I've been doing this for 40 years, and in the past year, there has been a dramatic change in the perception of meditation." Lena Dunham, the creator and star of Girls, has been meditating since she was 9 years old when she was diagnosed with an obsessive-compulsive disorder. She jokes that she comes from a line of neurotic Jewish women who need transcendental meditation more than anyone, and describes how calming meditation is when it feels like her world is spinning quickly around her. "Meditation gathers me up for the day and makes me feel organized and happy and capable of facing the challenges of the world, both internal and external." Padmasree Warrior, the chief technology officer of Cisco, calls meditation a reboot for your brain and your soul. She meditates every night and spends her Saturdays doing a digital detox. Warrior drew on her meditation practice to manage 22,000 employees in her previous role as Cisco's head of engineering. It's hard to think of anything else that is simultaneously so simple and so powerful. It's a vital tool not just for us as individuals, but collectively as well. Vanquishing infectious disease has left us living with chronic diseases of lifestyle and aging, says Mathieu Ricard, leading to the possibility that healthcare can focus on increasing human flourishing by putting the person's well-being, body, mind, and spirit at the center, empowering them for optimal life. For those who still think of meditation and mindfulness as exotic imports, it's important to recognize that our Western traditions of prayer and contemplation and the Stoic philosophy of ancient Greece and Rome fulfill the same purpose as the Eastern practice of meditation. According to Taoist philosophy, rest is prior to motion and stillness prior to action, and every Christian tradition incorporates some equivalent form of mindfulness. In the 6th century, Saint Benedict established the tradition of Lectio Divina, divine reading, a 4-part practice of reading, meditation, prayer, and contemplation. The Quakers built their belief system almost entirely around what are, in effect, the principles of mindfulness. Believing that the light of God is in everyone, Quakers structure their services, called meetings, around silence. There is no leader or minister, and members usually arrange themselves in a circle facing one another to emphasize the collective spirit and lack of hierarchy. Meetings, which are open to everybody of any faith, begin with silence, which continues until someone feels moved to speak. But the silence isn't interstitial or an intermission. It's the main show. It allows all those present to access their own inner light and be nourished by the collective silence of the group. If pressed to say what they are actually doing in a meeting for worship, wrote Richard Allen, professor at the University of South Wales, many Quakers would probably say that they are waiting in their utmost hearts for the touch of something beyond their everyday selves. Some would call it a listening to the quiet voice of God, without trying to define the word. In the 1970s, Basil Pennington, a Trappist monk, developed a practice called the centering prayer. It entails 4 steps. 1. Sit comfortably with your eyes closed, relax, and quiet yourself. Be in love and faith to God. 2. Choose a sacred word that best supports your sincere intention to be in the Lord's presence and open to His divine action within you. For example, Jesus, Lord, God, Savior, Abba, Divine, Shalom, Spirit, Love. 3. Let that word be gently present as your symbol of your sincere intention to be in the Lord's presence and open to His divine action within you. 4. Whenever you become aware of anything, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, images, associations, simply return to your sacred word, your anchor. It's remarkable how similar the pathways that connect us with our own being are. The symbols and the mantras differ, but the essence and the truth remain through the ages and across many different continents, religions, and psychological practices. Catholicism includes the Rosary, a prayer devoted to Mary, but also a practice about contemplation deepening through ritualistic repetition. Prayer beads are used as a method of releasing the mind by giving the fingers a physical focus. Prayer beads are also used in many other traditions, including Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam, in which they're used to recite the 99 names of Allah as part of the Tasbih of Fatima prayer. As the Prophet Muhammad himself said, 1 hour's meditation on the work of the Creator is better than 70 years of prayer. Sufism, a mystical tradition of Sunni Islam, emphasizes inner enlightenment and love as the pathways to ultimate truth. It also gave birth to the whirling dervishes who perform a ritual dance as an offering, a meditation, and an expression of the love of the divine. Judaism also has a long mystical tradition that emphasizes inner wisdom and enlightenment. The 12th century Kabbalah talks about using meditative practices to descend to the end of the world, and thus transcend our external selves and deepen our engagement with the divine. Torah coach Fruma Rosenberg Gottlieb wrote about leaving her farm in the mountains of Colorado and moving to New York to study the Torah, while also demonstrating that heightened spirituality doesn't always involve moving from the big city to the mountains. As I became more sophisticated in my understanding of Torah, she writes, I realized that mindfulness and a peaceful, balanced soul is indeed an objective in Jewish life, and that the tools for attaining it are subtly woven into the tapestry of Torah knowledge. I learned, for example, that the Hebrew word shalom implies not just peace, but also completion, perfection, wholeness. We bless one another with peace. Our daily prayers culminate in a request for peace. She also notes that meditation in Judaism goes way back, all the way to Abraham's son Isaac, who, as Genesis 24 tells us, went out to meditate in the field toward evening, as he awaited his bride-to-be, Rebekah. So no matter what tradition you follow, or if you follow no tradition, there is some form of meditation and mindfulness that can be integrated into your life. And if you want to enjoy the benefits of mindfulness but don't want to start with meditation, prayer, or contemplation, just go fly fishing. In fact, I have friends who have said to me, my meditation is running, or skydiving, or gardening. But can you create that state of mind at will without having to put on your running shoes, open your parachute, get out your trowel, or cast your fishing rod in the water? The point is to find some regular activity that trains your mind to be still, fully present, and connected with yourself. Just do it regularly and integrate the benefits into your everyday life. And of course, throw the fish back. Mindfulness shouldn't be about coming home with a trophy to mount above the fireplace. In her forthcoming book, Mindful London, Tessa Watt, a mindfulness teacher and consultant, writes about incorporating mindful reminders into our city lives. Here are 3 of my favorites which we can adopt wherever we find ourselves, whether in a frantic metropolis or an idyllic village. Use the famous British queue at the bus stop, post office, or shop as a chance to slow down and practice mindfulness. Instead of letting the frequent wailing of sirens irritate us, we could use the sound to remind us to take a pause and notice the moment. At the traffic crossing, instead of being impatient for the green man, appreciate how the red man gives us a chance to stop, breathe, and look around. Have patience with all things, but chiefly have patience with yourself. Do not lose courage by considering your own imperfections, but instantly set about remedying them. Every day begin the task anew. Francis de Sales. Why gazelles are my role models. At the Huffington Post, since the news never stops, and there is the temptation for editors, reporters, and engineers to try to match the 24-hour news cycle, we do a lot to prevent burnout. First, we make it very clear that no one is expected to check work email and respond after hours or over the weekend unless, of course, these are their working hours. Everyone has at least 3 weeks of vacation time, which they are highly encouraged to take. And I have implored HuffPosters, without much success I must admit, to eat lunch away from their desks. We also have 2 nap rooms in our newsroom, which are now full most of the time, even though they were met with skepticism and reluctance when we installed them in the spring of 2011. Many were afraid their colleagues might think they were shirking their duties by taking a nap. We've made it very clear, however, that walking around drained and exhausted is what should be looked down on, not taking a break to rest and recharge. In our New York offices, we host meditation, breathing, and yoga classes throughout the week, while our new DC offices have dedicated meditation, yoga, and nap rooms. And the benefits of standing and walking as opposed to sitting all day long, which I describe later in the chapter, led us to provide a standing desk to anyone who requests it. We also have a gym and take part in the Virgin Pulse Wellness Program, where employees can earn up to $500 a year by engaging in healthy practices. And to facilitate such healthy practices, we have refrigerators stocked with healthy snacks, including yogurt, hummus, fruit, and baby carrots. Although I've noticed that the bulk of the baby carrots remain unclaimed and look rather forlorn by the end of the week. This is not just good for those who work at HuffPost, it's good for HuffPost. At Facebook, COO Sheryl Sandberg has said publicly that she leaves the office at 5:30 to have dinner with her 2 young children, and she encourages others to find schedules that work for them so they can get the time with their families or just the time for themselves that they need. The relationship between overwork and a loss of productivity is consistent regardless of nationality or culture. According to 2012 numbers from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, among European countries, Greece was number 1 in hours worked, Hungary was second, and Poland third. Their productivity rankings, however, were 18th, 24th, and 25th, dead last. Working the fewest hours were the Dutch, Germans, and Norwegians, who came in at 5th, 7th, and 2nd in productivity. Increasingly, companies are realizing that their employees' health is one of the most important predictors of the company's health as well. In those all-important Wall Street conference calls, business analysts, in addition to asking about sales reports, market share, and earnings, should be quizzing CEOs about their employees' stress levels. One of the most popular classes Google offers employees is known as SIY, which is an acronym for Search Inside Yourself. The class was started by Chada Meng Tan, an engineer and Google employee number 107. Tan went on to write a book about his principles, Search Inside Yourself. The course is divided into 3 parts: attention training, self-knowledge, and building useful mental habits. Richard Fernandez, the co-founder of Wisdom Labs, who took Tan's course when he was at Google, explained its value. "I'm definitely much more resilient as a leader. It's almost an emotional and mental bank account. I've now got much more of a buffer there." But the trend goes far beyond Silicon Valley. Janice Martirano set up a popular mindfulness program at General Mills when she served as its deputy general counsel, with a meditation room in every building of the campus. She has since founded the Institute for Mindful Leadership. Mindfulness is about training our minds to be more focused, to see with clarity, to have spaciousness for creativity, and to feel connected, she says. That compassion to ourselves, to everyone around us, our colleagues, customers, that's what the training of mindfulness is really about. There is no work-life balance. We have one life. What's most important is that you be awake for it, and it works. 80% of senior executives from General Mills and a dozen other Fortune 500 companies who participated in her mindfulness leadership training said they felt the mindfulness program had improved their ability to make better decisions. The main business case for meditation is that if you're fully present on the job, you will be more effective as a leader, says Bill George, a Harvard Business School professor and the former CEO of medical devices company Medtronic. You will make better decisions. One of the primary obstacles keeping many businesses from adopting more sane and sustainable metrics of success is the stubborn and dangerously wrong-headed myth that there is a trade-off between high performance at work and taking care of ourselves. This couldn't be less true. And soon, the companies that still believe this will be in the minority. Right now, about 35% of large and mid-sized U.S. employers offer some sort of stress reduction program, including Target, Apple, Nike, and Procter & Gamble. And those that do are starting to be recognized for their efforts, especially by employees. Glassdoor.com, the social jobs and careers community, releases an annual list of the top 25 companies for work-life balance. Companies that make sincere efforts to recognize employees' lives outside of the office, said Glassdoor's Rusty Rueff, will often see the payoff when it comes to recruiting and retaining top talent. In 2013, among Fortune's 100 best companies to work for, several stood out for their commitment to well-being. Salesforce.com, which offers free yoga, a $100 benefit for wellness, and 48 hours of paid time to volunteer, came in at number 19. At number 4 was the Boston Consulting Group, which flags employees working too many long weeks with a red zone report and allows new hires to delay starting for 6 months and receive $10,000 when they volunteer to work for a nonprofit. At Promega, a biotech company in Wisconsin, employees have access to on-site yoga classes, fitness centers, healthy meals, offices filled with natural light, and third spaces, community areas that are neither work nor home, such as cafes and lounges. You create a culture of wellness, Promega's chief medical officer, Ashley G. Anderson Jr. said. If you create a culture in which vibrant physicality is an admired thing, you've achieved a lot. A healthy workforce is a productive workforce. The Minneapolis staffing company Solo has enlisted the best-selling author Dan Buettner for help. Buettner is an expert in blue zones, regions of the world with the highest life expectancy, including Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Ikaria, Greece, where people are 1,000% more likely to live to 100 than in the United States. Now Buettner is helping make Salo the first certified blue zone workplace. With meditation rooms, adjustable height desks, cooking lessons, and purpose workshops to help employees follow their non-work passions, the effort is yielding results for both employees and the company. There's a culture and developing reputation at Solo as a place that puts the well-being of its employees and partners in front of just profits, Buettner said. We're already seeing well-being and life expectancy increase with the employees there. It pays off, we believe, in higher worker engagement, lower healthcare costs, higher productivity, and lower absenteeism. At the nearly 100-year-old supermarket chain, Wegmans, Danny Wegman, grandson of the founder, has recognized the benefit of encouraging his 45,000 employees to get healthier. The company now offers on-site yoga and Zumba classes, nutritional counseling, and high blood pressure screenings. At Aetna, the third largest health insurance provider in the United States, CEO Mark Bertolini discovered the health benefits of meditation, yoga, and acupuncture while recovering from a horrible ski accident that left him with a broken neck. He proceeded to make them available to his 49,000 employees and brought in Duke University to conduct a study on the cost savings. The results? A 7% drop in healthcare costs in 2012 and 69 minutes of additional productivity per day for those employees who participated in Aetna's wellness programs. And doing yoga 1 hour each week reduced stress among employees by 1/3. Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, who has been meditating for more than 35 years and considers it the single most important reason for his success, pays for half of his employees' meditation classes and picks up the entire bill if they commit to it for more than 6 months. No one in our time finds it surprising if a man gives careful daily attention to his body, but people would be outraged if he gave the same attention to his soul. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner coined the term managing compassionately. He wrote that the objective to expand the world's collective wisdom and compassion has influenced every aspect of my work. Compassion can and should be taught, not only throughout a child's K-12 curriculum, but in higher education and corporate learning and development programs as well. Managing compassionately includes practicing and expecting transparent communications and practicing walking in someone else's shoes. When strongly disagreeing with another, most of us have a tendency to see things solely through our own worldview. In these circumstances, it can be constructive to take a minute to understand why the other person has reached the conclusion that they have. For instance, what in their background has led them to take that position? Are they fearful of a particular outcome that may not be obvious at surface level? Asking yourself these questions, and more importantly, asking the other person these questions, can take what would otherwise be a challenging situation and transform it into a coachable moment and truly collaborative experience. John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, summed up his vision of compassionate management at HuffPost's first Third Metric Conference in the summer of 2013. We must bring love out of the corporate closet. And Third Metric wellness practices extend far beyond yoga and meditation. Farhad Chowdhury, CEO of the software development company Fifth Tribe, connects with colleagues during 4-mile hikes. As Gregory Burns, author of Iconoclast, a neuroscientist, reveals how to think differently, writes, "Insight and discovery are most accessible to us when we break up our routine. Only when the brain is confronted with stimuli that it has not encountered before does it start to reorganize perception. The surest way to provoke the imagination, then, is to seek out environments you have no experience with." Nobel Prize-winning chemist Kary Mullis, he notes, landed on the principle of polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, not in a lab, but on a Northern California highway. What matters is that we find a way, anyway, to recharge and renew ourselves. My screensaver is a picture of gazelles. They are my role models. They run and flee when there is a danger, a leopard or a lion approaching, but as soon as the danger passes, they stop and go back to grazing peacefully without a care in the world. But human beings cannot distinguish between real dangers and imagined ones. As Mark Williams explains, the brain's alarm signals start to be triggered not only by the current scare, but by past threats and future worries. So, when we humans bring to mind other threats and losses, as well as the current scenario, our body's fight-or-flight systems do not switch off when the danger is past. Unlike the gazelles, we don't stop running. This is modern man's predicament, perfectly summed up by Montaigne. There were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened. We need to liberate ourselves from the tyranny of our fight-or-flight mechanism. And yet much of our life has actually been structured so that we live in an almost permanent state of fight or flight. Here comes another dozen emails calling out for a response. Must stay up late to finish the project. I'll just use these 4 minutes of downtime to return 6 more calls. Under our current definition of success, a chronic state of fight or flight is a feature, not a bug. Overconnectivity, the snake in our digital Garden of Eden. Unfortunately, the ever-increasing creep of technology into our lives, our families, our bedrooms, our brains makes it much harder to renew ourselves. The average smartphone user checks his or her device every 6.5 minutes. That works out to around 150 times a day. Our brains are naturally wired to connect, so it's not easy to turn away from these kinds of stimuli. But the connection that comes from technology is often an unfulfilling ersatz version of connection. Its siren call, or beep, or blinking light, can crowd out the time and energy we have for real human connection. Worse, there is evidence that it can begin to actually rewire our brains to make us less adept at real human connection. David Roberts, a writer for the environmental online magazine Grist, saw this happening in his own life. "I am burnt the fout," he wrote in a memorable goodbye to the internet and his job for a year letter. So he decided to do something about it. "I enjoy sharing zingers with Twitter all day. I enjoy writing long, wonky posts at night. But the lifestyle has its drawbacks. I don't get enough sleep ever. I don't have any hobbies. I'm always at work. I'm never disconnected. It's doing things to my brain. I think in tweets now. My hands start twitching if I'm away from my phone for more than 30 seconds. I can't even take a pee now without getting bored. I know I'm not the only one tweeting in the bathroom. The online world, which I struggle to remember, represents only a tiny, unrepresentative slice of the American public, has become my world. I spend more time there than in the real world." He is not alone. A 2012 McKinsey Global Institute study found that the average knowledge economy employee spends 28% of his or her time dealing with email more than 11 hours a week. According to Sanebox, which makes email filtering software, it takes us 67 seconds to recover from each email that lands in our inboxes. At some point, says Sanebox's Dmitry Leonov, we have to understand this process is hurting us. Our relationship with email has become increasingly one-sided. We try to empty our inboxes, bailing like people in a leaky lifeboat, but more and more of it keeps pouring in. How we deal with our email has become a big part of our techno-stress. And it's not just the never-ending deluge of emails we never get to, the growing pile that just sits there judging us all day, but even the ones we do get to, the reply-to emails that we think should be making us feel good. Linda Stone worked on emerging technologies at both Apple and Microsoft in the 1980s and 90s. In 1997, she coined the term continuous partial attention to describe the state of always being partly tuned into everything, while never being completely tuned into anything. Now it feels like a good three-word description of modern life. 10 years later, Stone noticed something peculiar happening when she read her email. She would hold her breath for short bursts of time, so she dubbed it email apnea. She also conducted a study to see if others experienced the same thing. The results? 80% of those she examined were found to have periods of email apnea. It might sound trivial, but it's not. Disrupting your body's breathing pattern can knock your body's balance of oxygen, nitric oxide, and carbon dioxide out of whack, which can, in turn, play a part in exacerbating stress-related conditions. The simplest tool for avoiding email apnea? To observe your breathing as you deal with your emails, to pull yourself out of automatic pilot. And remember, as Financial Times columnist Tim Harford puts it, email is your servant. Corner office people have secretaries to prevent them from being interrupted. Email will do all this for you too. His advice? Turn off all notifications. You should control when you want information, not the reverse. The problem is that with smartphones, email is no longer confined to the office. It comes with us to the gym, to dinner, to bed. But there are more and more ingenious ways to fight back, like the phone stacking game when friends meet for dinner. They put their phones in a stack in the middle of the table, and the first one who checks his device before the bill comes has to pick up the check. Kimberly Brooks, HuffPost's founding arts editor, plays another game at dinner, the "Don't take a picture of your meal" game. Unless you're an on-call doctor or food professional, she says, pulling out your cell phone during a meal with family, coworkers, friends, and especially kids, at home or a restaurant, pierces the sanctity of mealtime, or, as I like to think of it, the invisible ceremonial dome under which humankind forges civilization. She wants to add inappropriate phone checking to the standard list of etiquette no-nos. I seriously look forward to the day when the widely accepted practice of having phones anywhere near meals, never mind taking pictures, is looked upon as repugnant as picking one's nose, scratching one's balls, or chain-smoking in public. The editor of Scene magazine, Peter Davis, recounted a dinner party in which the host offered to check the guests' smartphones at the door. Perhaps smartphones at a party should be treated like coats, usually taken to a back room or otherwise stowed away until guests are ready to leave, a signal like taking off your coat that you're happy to be here and you're going to stay a while. Leslie Perlow, professor at Harvard Business School, introduced something called predictable time off, PTO, in which you take a planned night off. No email, no work, no smartphone. At one company that tried it, the Boston Consulting Group, productivity went up, and it's now a company-wide program. And after noticing that engineers at a software company were tired and harried from working all-nighters and weekends, Perlow came up with quiet time, set periods, in which employees agree to let one another work unfettered. Given that we multitask now for most of our days, if not our lives, unfettered work and play, unitasking, is something that has to be scheduled. An entire company decides to take an email vacation. That's what Shane Hughes, CEO of Learning as Leadership, decided to do in 2013, sending out an announcement that all internal email is forbidden for the next week. Employees were skeptical, but he says the results were unequivocal. Our high-octane, stay on top of whatever is happening via email mentality disappeared, he wrote in Forbes. In its place, we experienced a more focused and productive energy. The decrease in stress from one day to the next was palpable. So was our increase in productivity. The experience, he concluded, reconnected us with the neglected power of human interaction. Volkswagen has a special policy for employees who are provided with a smartphone and aren't part of management. The phone is programmed to switch off work emails automatically from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. so that the employees can take care of themselves and their families without feeling they have to stay plugged into work. Full Contact, a Denver software company, gives employees a $7,500 bonus if they follow 3 rules. 1. You have to go on vacation or you don't get the money. 2. You must disconnect. 3. You can't work while on vacation. Paradoxically, one of the biggest growth sectors for tools to help us deal with technology is technology. The first stages of the internet were about data and more data. But now we have plenty of data. Indeed, we're drowning in it and all the distraction we could ever hope for. Technology has been very good at giving us what we want, but not always what we need. So now, many in the tech world have realized there's a growth opportunity for applications and tools that help us focus and filter all that data and distraction. I have collected some of my favorites in Appendix A at the end of the book. The good news, as immunologist Esther Sternberg explained, is that you don't need to go offline. I mean offline, off your brain's line, for very long to reset things. If you feel your stress level mounting, you just turn away and look at the trees and listen to the birds and be quiet for a few moments. You can bring it down. Going offline can often become harder and harder as you advance up the career ladder. Increased power also brings with it the danger of losing the very qualities that are most essential to leadership. One study found that increased power lowers an executive's ability to be empathic. Another study on leadership and perspective found that power makes us prone to dismiss or misunderstand others' viewpoints, and relying increasingly on non-empathy-building electronic communications would only seem to exacerbate these tendencies. So any tool that can increase our self-awareness and ability to listen and be in the moment is invaluable. Secure your own mask. First, meditation, yoga, mindfulness, napping, and deep breathing once upon a time might have been thought of as new agey, alternative, and part of a counterculture. But in the past few years, we've reached a tipping point as more and more people realize that stress reduction and mindfulness aren't only about harmonic convergence and universal love, they're also about increased well-being and better performance. Indeed, not only is there no trade-off between living a well-rounded life and high performance, performance is actually improved when our life becomes more balanced. As Sheryl Sandberg told me, I found that when I cut my office hours dramatically once I had kids, I was not just working less, but I was more productive. Having children forced me to treat every minute of my time as precious. Did I really need that meeting? Was that trip essential? And not only did I get more productive, but everyone around me did too, as I cut out meetings that weren't essential for them also. In 2008 and then again in 2012, the Huffington Post decided to demonstrate that a balanced life is possible even during the most compulsively hectic days on the political calendar. During the 2008 Democratic National Convention in Denver, we offered harried conventioneers, including delegates and members of the media, a chance to unplug and recharge at the HuffPost Oasis, where we offered yoga classes, Thai massages, hand massages, mini facials, healthy snacks and refreshments, music, and comfortable seating for lounging and unwinding. The response was overwhelming. In fact, many hardened reporters told us that they had a difficult time tearing themselves away and returning to the convention. And we also had plenty tell us that taking time to recharge allowed them to cover the convention with more energy and come through the grueling week without being completely burned out. So in 2012, we did it again, on a larger scale, bringing our oasis to both the Republican convention in Tampa and the Democratic convention in Charlotte. The connection between being able to unplug and recharge and to think more deeply and productively about critical issues such as poverty, education, the environment, and the jobs crisis may not be immediately obvious. But the better people are at taking care of themselves, the more effective they'll be in taking care of others, including their families, their coworkers, their communities, and their fellow citizens. When you're on an airplane, you're told to secure your own mask first before helping others, even your own child. After all, it's not easy to help somebody else breathe easier if you're fighting for air yourself. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn asked in his novel In the First Circle, if you wanted to put the world to rights, who should you begin with, yourself or others? Of course, the idea of taking time out of our busy lives to rest dates back to the Ten Commandments, when God commanded the Israelites to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. For observant Jews, the time from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday is a time for introspection, spending time with family and friends, and doing anything but working. A biblical mandate to unplug and recharge. And Shabbat ends with the ceremony of Havdalah, separation, in which participants thank God for distinguishing light and darkness, and the seventh day of rest and the 6 days of labor. For women with jobs and careers, taking care of themselves becomes even harder if they become mothers. In our current corporate culture, having children is often seen as a major barrier to career advancement. There are certainly challenges in juggling family and career, and there are many badly needed institutional reforms that would make it less challenging. But for me, having children was the best possible antidote to my workaholic always-on tendencies. It gave me perspective and the ability to be more detached from the inevitable ups and downs of work life. Of course, you don't need to have children to have a healthy sense of priorities, but for me, they did make it easier. Just knowing I was going to see my daughters at the end of the day put my whole workday in a different light. Even a simple phone call from one of my daughters during the day, I found, was a reminder of what is really important in my life. And that is true to this day, now that my daughters are in their 20s. I'm far less likely to get stressed over a setback. And by the way, have you ever experienced a day without setbacks? Perhaps one day a brilliant scientist, undoubtedly a scientist with a big family, will come up with a name for this effect. But whatever it is, it has had a big impact on things like my confidence, mood, and enthusiasm, all of which are huge assets in the workplace. Here too, the science has caught up. According to a 2009 study from Brigham Young University, having a family has a measurable impact on our health, including on our blood pressure. Attaching blood pressure monitors to nearly 200 husbands and wives, researchers noticed that couples with children had significantly lower blood pressure than those without kids. The effect was even more pronounced among women. This is not to say that companies don't urgently need to address the structural impediments that make having children and a successful career so much harder. For far too many people, women especially, there is too little support in place to help balance career and family, which is crucial if we are truly going to redefine success for everyone. Flexible time, telecommuting, project-based work, and a company culture that does not expect employees to be wired and responsive 24/7 need to become the norm if we are to make our workplaces truly sustainable. Our current toxic definition of success and our addiction to our devices is having a particularly negative impact on the next generation. Generation Y, otherwise known as the Millennials, could be given a third, more alarming name, Generation Stress. A study commissioned by the American Psychological Association asked participants to rank their stress level. Millennials marched at the front of the stress parade. Moreover, the findings were dismally consistent across almost every question. Nearly 40% of millennials said their stress had increased over the past year, compared to 33% for baby boomers and 29% for older Americans. Over half of millennials said that stress had kept them awake at night during the past month, compared to 37% for baby boomers and 25% for older Americans. And only 29% of millennials say they're getting enough sleep. In the United Kingdom, according to a study by Oxford professor Russell Foster, more than half of British teenagers may be sleep-deprived. Here we have a classic example where sleep could enhance enormously the quality of life and, indeed, the educational performance of our young people. Yet they're given no instruction about the importance of sleep, and sleep is a victim to the many other demands that are being made of them. Meanwhile, higher levels of stress put millennials at higher risk downstream for all sorts of destructive consequences. Stress, as we've seen, is a huge contributing factor in heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. And already, 19% of millennials have been diagnosed with depression, compared to 12% of baby boomers and 11% of older Americans. Not surprisingly, one of the biggest causes of stress among younger Americans is work. 76% of millennials report work as a significant stressor, compared to 62% of baby boomers and 39% of older Americans. Among the challenges facing millennials is the growing number of them who graduate college with massive student debt and find themselves entering a weak job market. So millennials, more than any other generation, are casualties of the stress built into our economy, either overworking and hooked on technology, or unable to find work and struggling to pay the bills and survive. Of course, many of these are problems that require political action and economic reform. But whatever end of the spectrum one finds oneself, mindfulness, meditation, and assorted tools and practices not only help strengthen our resilience and ingenuity in the face of adversity, they also lead to greater performance in the workplace. Right. And yes, I realize there is a paradox in using the idea of enhanced performance as a selling point for practices that would help us redefine success. What we are talking about, after all, is what's ultimately important in our lives. In other words, meditation, yoga, getting enough sleep, renewing ourselves, and giving back make us better at our jobs at the same time that they make us aware that our jobs don't define who we are. Whatever your entry point is, take it. Right now, you may just want to be better at your job, or help your company become more successful, and that's the reason you start meditating, or practicing mindfulness, or sleeping more. But along the way, you will likely also gain some added perspective on what matters in your life. Writing in the New York Times about the third metric conference we held in June 2013, Anand Giridharadas pointed out that there is risk in this approach. To make the case for greater attention to well-being in terms of its effect on work performance may be to win the battle and lose the war. The victor remains the idea that what is good for work is good for us. I believe we can win both the battle and the war. Paying greater attention to our well-being, for whatever reason, connects us with parts of ourselves that now lie dormant, and makes it more likely that there will no longer be any split between being successful at work and thriving in life. Sleep your way to the top. The most basic shift we can make in redefining success in our lives has to do with our strained relationship to sleep. As Dr. Michael Roizen, Chief Wellness Officer of the Cleveland Clinic, put it, sleep is the most underrated health habit. Most of us fail to make good use of such an invaluable part of our lives. In fact, we deliberately do just the opposite. We think, mistakenly, that success is the result of the amount of time we put in at work, instead of the quality of time we put in. Sleep, or how little of it we need, has become a symbol of our prowess. We make a fetish of not getting enough sleep, and we boast about how little sleep we get. I once had dinner with a man who bragged to me that he'd gotten only 4 hours of sleep the night before. I resisted the temptation to tell him that the dinner would have been a lot more interesting if he had gotten 5. There's practically no element of our lives that's not improved by getting adequate sleep, and there is no element of life that's not diminished by a lack of sleep, including our leaders' decisions. Bill Clinton, who used to famously get only 5 hours of sleep a night, admitted, "Every important mistake I've made in my life I've made because I was too tired." And in 2013, when the European Union was working on a plan to bail out Cyprus, an agreement was reached during the wee hours of the night that was described by one commentator as impressively stupid. The financial journalist Felix Salmon describes the decision as born of an unholy combination of procrastination, blackmail, and sleep-deprived gamesmanship. The role of sleep deprivation in international negotiations would make an excellent doctoral dissertation. Just don't pull any all-nighters to finish it. Our creativity, ingenuity, confidence, leadership, and decision-making can all be enhanced simply by getting enough sleep. Sleep deprivation negatively impacts our mood, our ability to focus, and our ability to access higher-level cognitive functions. The combination of these factors is what we generally refer to as mental performance, say Drs. Stuart Kwan and Russell Sana from Harvard Medical School's Division of Sleep Medicine. I have been such a sleep evangelist for the past 5 years that I was asked to join its executive council, a role that has provided me with a great education in the latest sleep research, and that has, in turn, further reinforced my sleep evangelism. A study at Duke University has found that poor sleep is associated with higher stress levels and a greater risk of heart disease and diabetes. They also found that these risks are greater in women than in men. Till Rueneberg, a professor at Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich, who is an expert on sleep cycles, coined the term social jet lag to explain the discrepancy between what our body clocks need and what our social clocks demand. Of course, plain old jet lag can also play havoc with our body clocks. So, as someone who travels a lot across multiple time zones, I am ruthless in enforcing my anti-jet lag rules. While airborne, I drink as much water as possible, strictly avoid sugar and alcohol, move around the plane as much as space and security restrictions will allow, and above all, sleep as long as I can with the help of my meditation music playlist, and by putting away portable electronic devices, even when they're allowed. Like meditation, our sleep patterns can have a physical effect on our brain. A study conducted at Harvard Medical School found that people who got more sleep than the bare minimum they needed increased the volume of gray matter in their brains, which is linked to improved psychological health. A 2013 study on mice showed that during sleep the brain clears out harmful waste proteins that build up between its cells, a process that may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. "It's like a dishwasher," said one of the study's authors, Maiken Nedergaard, a professor of neurosurgery at the University of Rochester. Professor Nedergaard made an analogy to a house party. You can either entertain the guests or clean up the house, but you can't really do both at the same time. The brain only has a limited energy at its disposal, and it appears that it must choose between two different functional states, awake and aware or asleep and cleaning up. Far too many of us have been doing too much entertaining and not enough cleaning up. As the Great British Sleep Survey found, poor sleepers are 7 times more likely to feel helpless and 5 times more likely to feel alone. These are consequences that can impact everything from our relationships and our ability to focus to our health. Our sleep deficit has significant economic costs as well. A 2011 Harvard Medical School study found that insomnia was significantly associated with lost work performance, and when projected onto the entire U.S. workforce, the study estimates that the lost performance due to insomnia costs businesses more than $63 billion per year. More and more scientific studies speak to the irrefutable benefits of sleep. A study published in Science even calculated that for the sleep-deprived, an extra hour of sleep can do more for their daily happiness than a $60,000 raise. In fact, a number of studies have failed to find a consistent connection between extra money and happiness, as large increases of real income in the developed world over the past half century have not correlated with increases in reduced happiness. University of Southern California economic professor Richard Easterlin conducted a study that analyzed the correlation between income and reported well-being, and found that in Japan, well-being levels remained constant between 1958 and 1987, despite a 500% increase in real income. But what do we do if, despite our best intentions, we're not getting the 7 or 8 hours a night of sleep we need? Researchers have found that even short naps can help us course correct. Throughout history, famous nappers have included Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Edison, Eleanor Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and John F. Kennedy. Charlie Rose, a famous napper of our time, told me that he is now taking up to 3 naps a day. "I have a nap after we finish our CBS morning show, a nap before I tape my own show, and a nap before I go out in the evening. I don't like the feeling of going through my day tired." According to David Randall, author of Dreamland, Adventures in the Strange Science of Sleep, a short nap primes our brains to function at a higher level, letting us come up with better ideas, find solutions to puzzles more quickly, identify patterns faster, and recall information more accurately. Of course, getting more sleep is easier said than done. Believe me, I know. This is especially true in a culture that's wired and connected 24/7. And more science is proving that glowing screens and sleep are natural enemies. Researchers at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute recently published a study showing that the light from computer screens obstructs the body's production of melatonin, which helps govern our internal body clock and regulates our sleep cycle. Technology allows us to be so hyper-connected with the outside world that we can lose connection to our inner world. We desperately need to purge our lives of the poison of what Anne-Marie Slaughter called time macho. She describes it as our relentless competition to work harder, stay later, pull more all-nighters, travel around the world, and bill the extra hours that the international dateline affords you. In January 2010, I convinced Cindy Leave, editor-in-chief of Glamour magazine, to join me in a New Year's resolution that we believed would improve the lives of women everywhere in the world: to get more sleep. To us, sleep was a feminist issue. You see, of all the sleep-deprived Americans, women are the most fatigued. Working moms get the least sleep, with 59% of respondents to a national survey reporting sleep deprivation, and 50% saying they get 6 hours of sleep or less. Cindy admitted that between her work, her 2 young children, and her TV addiction, she was averaging just over 5 hours a night. Women are significantly more sleep-deprived than men. confirms Dr. Michael Brose, author of Beauty Sleep. They have so many commitments, and sleep starts to get low on the totem pole. They may know that sleep should be a priority, but then, they've just got to get that last thing done. And that's when it starts to get bad. Cheating your body out of the RR it needs can make you more prone to illness, stress, traffic accidents, and weight gain. Dr. Bruce swears that sleeping will actually do more to take off weight than exercise. But there's more to sleep deprivation than physical problems. Rob yourself of sleep and you'll find you do not function at your personal best. This is true of work decisions, relationship challenges, or any life situation that requires judgment, emotional equilibrium, problem solving, and creativity. Everything you do, you'll do better with a good night's sleep, says Dr. Brose. Yet we constantly push ourselves to get by on less until we often don't even know what peak performance feels like anymore. There's a reason why sleep deprivation is classified as a form of torture and is a common strategy employed by religious cults. They force prospective members to stay awake for extended periods to reduce their subjects' decision-making ability and make them more open to persuasion. So the choice is ours. Do we want to be empowered women and men taking charge of our lives? Or do we want to drag ourselves around like zombies? Back to our New Year's resolution. For a month, Cindy and I committed to getting a full night's sleep. In Cindy's case, 7.5 hours of sleep, in mine 8. Arrived at through trial and error as the number of hours it takes for each of us to be at our most creative and effective. Getting a good night's sleep, of course, is an easier resolution to make than to keep. We had to tune out a host of temptations, from Jon Stewart to our email inboxes. And, most of all, we had to ignore the workaholic wisdom that says we're lazy for not living up to the example set by notoriously self-professed undersleepers. Of course, the truth is just the opposite. Each of us is much more likely to be a professional powerhouse if we're not asleep at the wheel. The problem is that women too often feel that they don't belong in the boys' club atmosphere that still dominates many workplaces. So they attempt to overcompensate by working harder and longer than the guy next to them. Hard work helps women fit in and gain a measure of security. And it can work, at least initially. So they begin to do it more and more often, making long hours part of their professional lifestyle. But it's a Pyrrhic victory. The workaholism leads to lack of sleep, which, in turn, leads to not being at our best. Too many of us are fueled by the fear that getting the proper amount of sleep means we must not be passionate enough about our work and our life. By sleeping more, we, in fact, become more competent and in control of our lives. It gives new meaning to the old canard of women sleeping our way to the top. Women have already broken glass ceilings in Congress, space travel, sports, business, and the media. Imagine what we can do when we're all fully awake. Having a buddy certainly made our efforts to get more sleep much easier and more fun. I remember Cindy emailing me on day 3. I got 7.5 last night, but it was very stressful to get myself to bed on time. I was rushing around like I was trying to make a train. She helped me identify that same feeling in myself. One night, I was discussing a potential HuffPost headline with our founding editor Roy Sekoff at 10:30 p.m., and I started getting nervous that I was going to miss the train. So Roy and I sped up our brainstorming so we could get the new headline up on the site without me missing my sleep deadline. It felt as if we were defusing a bomb in an action movie. Most important, as we were hanging up, I was able to laugh at myself, always a great stress buster. And I discovered a number of great sleep aids. For starters, the yummy pink silk pajamas Cindy sent me as a gift. Just putting them on made me feel ready for bed, so much more than the cotton t-shirts I usually wear at night. Those pajamas were unmistakably going-to-bed clothes, not to be confused with going-to-the-gym clothes. Too many of us have ignored the distinction between what you wear during the day and what you wear to bed. Slipping on the PJs was a signal to my body, time to shut down. An even more important signal that it's time to shut down is turning off our devices. I made sure I had my iPhone and my Blackberries, yes, I have more than one, charging far, far away from my bed to help me avoid the middle-of-the-night temptation to check the latest news or latest emails. And Cindy came up with a new trick to use if she was having trouble falling asleep. Counting backward from 300 by threes. It works like magic and you never get below 250. On the few occasions when I feel too wired to sleep, my panacea is a hot bath with my favorite bath salts. On day 4 of our sleep rehab, I actually woke up without an alarm. I looked around anxiously to see what was wrong, wondering what emergency my body had summoned my attention for. It took me a minute or two to realize that the reason I was wide awake was because I didn't need to sleep anymore. Imagine that. Professor Ronenberg explains that although 80% of the world uses an alarm clock to wake up on workdays, discovering how much sleep we truly need is fairly simple. We sometimes overeat, but we generally cannot oversleep. When we wake up unprompted, feeling refreshed, we have slept enough. He goes on, with the widespread use of electric light, our body clocks have shifted later while the workday has essentially remained the same. We fall asleep according to our late body clock and are awakened early for work by the alarm clock. We therefore suffer from chronic sleep deprivation. It's like we're going deeper and deeper into debt, and we're never going to get out. One of the benefits of getting enough sleep was starting my day feeling like one of those horrible rise and shine people you normally want to throttle when you are among the sleep-deprived majority. I hit the ground running, minus the morning mental fog. Many of us know that regular exercise helps us sleep better, but what I discovered is that it's a two-way street. Regular sleep also helps us exercise better. It's a truth that I felt quite literally in my bones, and that has been borne out by science. According to a recent study in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine by researchers from Northwestern, after a bad night's sleep, participants reported having shorter exercise sessions. When I hit the workout machines as part of my morning exercise routine, I was lifting heavier weights, punching the treadmill button to go faster, and giving it a higher incline than usual. If someone who knows my usual exercise routine saw me during these workouts, I'd probably be asked to submit to mandatory drug testing. But the only performance-enhancing stimulant I was on was a couple of 8-hour nights of sleep. This is one reason why, as Dr. Bros points out, getting more sleep can lead to weight loss. And my energy lasted throughout the day. I have a group of friends with whom I hike. It's our tradition that whoever is feeling the most energized that day has to talk on the way up the hill we climb. The rest talk on the way down. Let's just say I'm pretty well known as a consistent downhill talker. But on my last hike, I was talking nonstop on the way up, mostly haranguing my hiking partners to get more sleep. I also took another cue from Cindy, who devised a plan to treat her bedtime like an appointment, with the same urgency and importance that we give all our work-related appointments. It is, in effect, a meeting you've scheduled with yourself. She calculates what time she needs to be up, counts back 7.5 hours, that's her goal, and whatever time that is becomes her appointment. If you have type A tendencies, guilty, and feel satisfaction by meeting deadlines and appointments, it's a brilliant way to use your compulsion more productively. Too many of us think of our sleep as the flexible item in our schedule that can be endlessly moved around to accommodate our fixed and top priority of work. But like a flight or train, our sleep should be thought of as the fixed point in our day, and everything else should be adjusted as needed so we don't miss it. And to help keep her appointment, Cindy utilized Dr. Bros's suggestion to set an alarm to go off in your bedroom when it's time to go to bed. You'll be forced to enter your bedroom to turn the damn thing off, which at least gets you into the right room at the right time, she told me. Going public about your decision to get more sleep can be one way to make that commitment stick. You'll be surrounded, as I found out, by sympathetic friends who have been wanting to do the same thing and who will help you stick to your sleep goals. In my case, because I blogged about my sleep commitment on the Huffington Post, I started having complete strangers come up to me at events, glancing at their watches and wondering how much longer I planned to stay and whether I was going to be able to get my 8 hours. I felt like a kid out on a school night with dozens of babysitters all anxious to help me keep my commitment. One result of getting more and better sleep has been an increase in the intensity of my dreams. I'm not sure if my dreams are actually more intense, vivid, and interesting, or if they only seem that way because I'm not waking up longing to sleep more. Whatever the reason, I suddenly find myself in possession of a rich and compelling dream life. Reconnecting with my dreams has been like reuniting with an old flame. I've always been fascinated by dreams. On a trip to Luxor in Egypt, I visited the sleep chambers at the Luxor temple where the high priests and priestesses retired after they had prepared, through prayer and meditation, to receive in their sleep divine guidance and inspiration. In stark contrast to our modern habit of drugging ourselves senseless, hoping to crash for a few hours before having to face another frantic day, the ancient Egyptians went to sleep expectantly. This spiritual preparation for sleep allowed them to bring back remnants of their dreams and notes from their night's travels. Even before my trip to Egypt, I had long been captivated by Carl Jung's emphasis on dreams and archetypes. His autobiographical Memories, Dreams, Reflections is one of my favorite books. It helped me explore the possibility that the world of dreams, far from shutting us off from what we consider the real world, actually opens us up to another reality. a timeless place that allows us to listen to our souls. Following that trip to Egypt, and for many years after, I used to write down my dreams in a journal. I filled notebook after notebook. But then life, especially motherhood, intervened. And between nursing a newborn, comforting a crying baby, or holding a feverish toddler, to say nothing of trying to continue how to write books and newspaper columns, time evaporated into the night, and sleep became aspirational, more of a survival tactic and less of a way to connect to the sacred and the divine. Night and sleep soon became all about transitions. Head hitting the pillow only when the schedule allowed. Waking up already late, already on the run. Life became a cycle of crash and rush, crash and rush. It was a cycle I eventually became used to. It seemed normal. Then came my reawakening, my reacquaintance with sleep, when I made sleep a priority. When I did so, I also gave myself permission to remember my dreams. A side benefit of remembering your dreams is that it is a great opportunity to connect even more deeply with the people closest to you. My younger daughter and I now regularly exchange our dreams. One of her recurring dreams is a good metaphor for what a good night's sleep allows us to do. She imagines herself as a living stop sign, forcing people to come to a complete stop before moving on with their lives. Dr. Bruce explains why dreaming is so important. Dreaming, most often in REM sleep, helps consolidate your memories. So, what might that mean for you? You will begin to see an improvement in your overall memory and your ability to organize your thoughts and maybe getting things done. Beyond the practical benefits of remembering your dreams, there are the deeper spiritual reasons, summed up by Rumi. There is a basket of fresh bread on your head, and yet you go door to door asking for crusts. Knock on your inner door, no other. Remembering our dreams is a way to knock on our inner door and find deeper insights and self-awareness. The sleep experts I have consulted with have provided me number of additional sleep tips. Here are some of the I found the most useful. Get a new pillow. And a new pillowcase. Make your bedroom darker and keep it cool. Practice deep breathing before bed. Take a warm bath before bed. Exercise or at least walk every day. Banish all LCD screens, laptops, tablets, smartphones, TV at night. Cut down on coffee after 2 p.m. and avoid alcohol right before bedtime to give the body time to metabolize it. And during the day, to prevent stress from building up, which makes it harder to fall asleep at night. Every few hours, take 60 seconds of recovery time, the way top tennis players introduce tiny slots of recovery rituals into their game. All you have to do is stop what you are doing and simply bring your awareness to the palms of your hands or the soles of your feet, or both. Let it stay there for a minute and feel all tension leaving your body, drifting away from you through your hands and feet. 4 years after our sleep challenge, Cindy and I launched an unplugging challenge, and this time we were joined by Mika Brzezinski, who, in addition to co-hosting Morning Joe, is also my co-host for our series of Third Metric conferences. For the last week of December, we all pledged to swear off TV, social media, and email so we could truly connect with our loved ones and with ourselves. Try unplugging, wrote Mika of her initial response to shutting off her devices. When, for the last decade, you have eaten, slept, showered, and exercised with your iPhone in hand. Obsessed is not the word. Addicted doesn't sum it up either. Tethered? On permanent phone IV? Permanently attached? Closer. Her unplugged week was spent on vacation with her family, including her phone-addicted teenage daughters. She vividly described what those first moments of phantom phone pain were like. When I put the phone down, I felt weird, incomplete, like I wasn't wearing a bra or something. At times during the beginning of the vacation, I actually held the phone even though it was off. It was like weaning. The turned-off phone was my binky. But she was amply rewarded for following through. I got so much out of unplugging, she wrote. Complete conversations with my dad and mom, a fun swim with my niece, running with Carly, running with Jim and Carly, walking with Emily, connecting. I even watched the sun go down without stopping to check my binky. Her conclusion, I highly recommend unplugging. For your health, for your relationships, for your life. As for Cindy, she also went through a shaky withdrawal, but the week taught her several lessons. For instance, as she wrote, when you're not on your phone, you instantly notice. Everyone else is, like literally everyone. We return from vacation slightly less informed, but slightly more blissed out, and more likely to stay zen in annoying situations because of the little digital detox. She also decided to carry some of those lessons forward. I'm vowing to stay off email for most of my evenings to keep my phone in my bag, not my hand, more often this year. Anyone with me? I urge you to join her. Lessons from the Sports Page, the ultimate performance-enhancing drugs. The fundamental flaw at the heart of our misguided definition of success is the belief that overworking is the route to high performance and exceptional results. One easy way to see the folly of this belief is to look at the world of sports, where performance is objectively quantified and measurable. The sports world, the source of many metaphors in the business world, home run, slam dunk, dropping the ball, heavy hitters, step up to the plate, and so forth, is in fact way ahead of the business world in its thinking about productivity and burnout. Top athletes are all about results, and because sports are endlessly quantifiable, it's often very easy to measure just what does and doesn't work. The tough, hard-hitting world of elite sports is increasingly embracing meditation, yoga, mindfulness, enough sleep, and napping precisely because athletes and coaches realize that they work. And for the shrinking pool of doubters, there is perhaps no better way to see the tangible effects of mindfulness and stress reduction tools on performance than in the world of sports. One of the most interesting and widely cited studies came out of Stanford. Over 10 years ago, Cherry Ma, a researcher at the Stanford Sleep Disorders Clinic, was looking into the impact of sleep on the brain. Several of the subjects in her research were on the Stanford swim team. They revealed to Ma that during the portions of the test when they were asked to get more sleep, they swam better and set personal bests. So Ma set out to see how strong the connection was between increased sleep and increased performance. Some early studies, using swimmers, football players, and tennis players, had pointed to a strong connection. So Ma ran a bigger study which, as ESPN's Peter Keating writes, jolted the world of sports analytics by essentially showing that you can get safe, legal HGH, human growth hormone, just by shutting off the lights. Over 3 seasons, Ma had 11 Stanford basketball players keep a normal schedule for a few weeks and then, for 5 to 7 weeks, had them take naps, eat carefully, and try to get 10 hours of sleep a night. All 11 players saw improvements in their performance. 3-point shooting went up 9.2%. Free throws were up 9%. Not only did on-court performance improve, but players said their moods were lifted and that they generally felt less fatigued. What these findings suggest is that these athletes were operating at a suboptimal level, Ma said. They'd accumulated a sleep debt. It's not that they couldn't function, they were doing fine, but that they might not have been at their full potential. And all over the sports world, new practices are being introduced. In 2005, the U.S. Olympic Committee, in consultation with sleep expert Mark Rosekind, upgraded the rooms at its Colorado Springs training center. The renovation consisted of better mattresses, blackout curtains, and encouragement for the athletes to aim for 9 or 10 hours of sleep. And many have taken the advice to heart. Sleep is huge in my sport, says Olympic marathoner Ryan Hall. Recovery is the limiting factor, not my ability to run hard. I typically sleep about 8 to 9 hours a night, but then I make sure to schedule 90-minute business meetings, aka naps, into my day for an afternoon rest. The Dallas Mavericks partnered with Fatigue Science from Vancouver to monitor players' sleep and compare it with their on-court performance using a wristband device. Fatigue Science founder Pat Byrne explained the logic. If a player is sleeping 6 hours a night and says, "I feel fine," we can actually say, "We can make your reaction time better if you're sleeping 8 hours. We can prove it to you. We can show you." Los Angeles. Lakers superstar Kobe Bryant will often linger at the team hotel before a game to get more sleep. He's also done meditation, a practice brought in by former coach Phil Jackson. Jackson also taught the concept of one breath, one mind to his players and had them engage in exercises such as a day of silence. "I approached it with mindfulness," he told Oprah. "As much as we pump iron and we run to build our strength up, we need to build our mental strength up so we can focus, so we can be in concert with one another." When Michael Jordan was the star of the Chicago Bulls, the team worked with meditation teacher George Mumford. "When we are in the moment and absorbed with the activity, we play our best," Mumford explained. "That happens once in a while, but it happens more often if we learn how to be more mindful." And a video of 4-time NBA MVP LeBron James meditating during a timeout became a hit on YouTube. Former Miami Dolphins running back Ricky Williams used to meditate before every game, and later ended up teaching a class on meditation at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. "This is my passion," he said. "I think a lot of people are so used to being stressed they don't realize they're stressed. And I was one of those people." Tennis grade Ivan Lendl used mental exercises to deepen his concentration. He would schedule downtime for relaxing and recharging often by taking naps. Since Lendl became Andy Murray's coach in 2012, the four-time Grand Slam runner-up won the US Open in 2012 and Wimbledon in 2013. Charlie Rose, in an interview with Murray, described what it's like watching Murray and other great pro players. You see the ball coming off the racket, it almost looks like slow motion. What a great image to hold in mind. A performer at the top of his game, rested, recharged, and focused. Time slowing down, the ball moving in slow motion, allowing him to make the best decision and execute it. I have found that mindfulness and stress reduction techniques do the exact same thing for the rest of us. In a rushed, harried, stressed-out state, the onslaught of what we have to do can go by in a jumbled blur. But rested and focused, what's coming next appears to slow down, allowing us to manage it with calm and confidence. As Tony Schwartz, founder of the Energy Project, says, with exercise, it's during rest and downtime that muscle growth occurs. To achieve peak physical fitness, we push ourselves hard in short bursts of high intensity, and then we rest and recover. And that's exactly how we should live our lives for overall performance and well-being. The same rhythmic movement serves us well all day long, but instead we live mostly linear, sedentary lives, Schwartz writes. We go from email to email and meeting to meeting, almost never getting much movement and rarely taking time to recover mentally and emotionally. The most effective way to operate at work is like a sprinter, working with single-minded focus for periods of no longer than 90 minutes, and then taking a break. That way, when you're working, you're really working, and when you're recovering, you're truly refueling the tank. As with elite athletes who put in the necessary preparation, both mentally and physically, you'll see a tangible difference in your work performance. In a study last year at the University of Washington, computer scientist David Levy had a group of human resources managers go through an 8-week mindfulness and meditation course. He then gave them some challenging office tasks involving email, instant messages, and word processing. Members of the group who had gone through the training could concentrate for longer stretches of time, were less distracted, and most important, had lower stress levels. Meditation is a lot like doing reps at a gym, Levy said. It strengthens your attention muscle. We don't have to have a 4-foot vertical leap to be like Michael Jordan and perform at our best. All we need is the commitment to get enough sleep, take time to recharge our mental and emotional batteries, put away our phones and laptops and tablets regularly, and try to introduce some stress reduction tools into our lives. Mindfulness, yoga, prayer, meditation, and contemplation aren't just tools reserved for retreats over long weekends anymore. They are the ultimate everyday performance enhancers. Walk this way. When I was living in Los Angeles, I discovered that I came up with many of my best ideas while I was hiking. And whenever I could, I would schedule hikes instead of sit-down meetings, with both my friends and HuffPost editors. Silicon Valley executive, Nilofer Merchant, calls this the walk the talk method. If you've got to talk to someone in person, why not do it while walking? What I love is that you're literally facing your problem or situation together when you walk side by side with someone, she said. I love that people can't be checking email or Twitter during walking meetings. You're awake to what's happening around you. Your senses are heightened, and you walk away with something office meetings rarely give you, a sense of joy. How many times have you experienced a sense of joy in a stale conference room while half listening to an endless PowerPoint presentation? Between our minds and our legs, one of them is going to wander. Sit still and our minds want to ramble. Get up and start walking, and our minds can slow down and be more focused. One of my favorite phrases is solvitur ambulando. It is solved by walking. It refers to the 4th century BC Greek philosopher Diogenes' response to the question of whether motion is real. To answer, he got up and walked. As it turns out, there are many problems for which walking is the solution. In our culture of overwork, burnout, and exhaustion, how do we tap into our creativity, our wisdom, our capacity for wonder? Solvitur ambulando. A lot of the planning for the Huffington Post was done on hikes. Our first investor, Lori David, decided to invest after I pitched her the idea on a hike. Our founding arts editor, Kimberly Brooks, pitched me the idea of an art section on a hike. Walking was also really important when I went into labor. Indeed, doctors are discovering that keeping women in bed for hours while they're in labor is one of the worst ways to facilitate the baby coming through the birth canal. Even though I was scheduled to give birth at the UCLA Medical Center, I spent most of my labor walking with my midwife around the grounds of the nearby hotel where we were staying. By some strange coincidence, that was the day that the sale of the hotel to new Japanese owners had been announced. So my strolls, around the grounds, past the herb garden, across the grass, and back to the lobby, were punctuated by the stares of worried disbelief from tourists, Japanese cameramen, and a couple of local television crews, as well as by my occasional sharp contraction, induced gasps, and my midwife's confident words of support. When the midwife estimated I was within an hour of delivering, we piled into the car. By then, my mother and sister had joined us, and off we went to the hospital. 30 minutes later, Christina was born. For as long as I can remember, walking has frequently led to solutions to whatever preoccupied me. When I was growing up in Greece, my favorite poem was Ithaca, by the Greek poet Constantine Cavafy. My sister, Agapi, and I had memorized the poem long before we could actually understand what it meant. It opens. As you set out for Ithaca, hope the voyage is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Over the years, I came to realize that a journey that is full of adventure and discovery doesn't have to involve planes and cars and passports. The benefits of a journey are available simply by walking. Now that I live in Manhattan, I walk all the time, both to get from place to place and to catch up with friends instead of having breakfast or lunch meetings. There are many accounts throughout history on the virtues of walking. Thomas Jefferson claimed the purpose of walking was to clear the mind of thoughts. The object of walking is to relax the mind, he wrote. You should therefore not permit yourself even to think while you walk, but divert your attention by the objects surrounding you. For Ernest Hemingway, walking was a way of developing his best thoughts while mulling a problem. I would walk along the quay when I had finished work or when I was trying to think something out, he wrote in A Movable Feast. It was easier to think if I was walking and doing something or seeing people doing something that they understood. Nietzsche went even further and proclaimed that only thoughts conceived while walking have any value. For Henry David Thoreau, walking wasn't just a means to an end. It was the end itself. The walking of which I speak has nothing in it akin to taking exercise, but is itself the enterprise and adventure of the day. Scientific studies increasingly show the psychological benefits of walking and other forms of exercise. It's become clear that this is a good intervention, particularly for mild to moderate depression, said Jasper Smits, a psychologist at Southern Methodist University. The results are so clear-cut that Smits and a colleague have written a guidebook for mental health professionals with advice on how to actually prescribe exercise for patients. And surprise, there is no page-long list of dangerous side effects accompanying this prescription. In the United Kingdom, in a series of studies at the University of Essex, researchers found that 94% of those who took part, walking, running, cycling, gardening, saw mental health benefits. Psychologist Laurel Lippert Fox has taken the idea one step further and conducts walking sessions with her patients. As she says, it's so much more dynamic than sitting in your Eames chair. Walking as a tool for dealing with depression is no small thing. When you consider that, according to the World Health Organization, more than 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression. Research has shown similar benefits from simply being outdoors and surrounded by nature, which has implications not only for city planning but also for indoor design and architecture, according to Richard Ryan of the University of Rochester Medical Center. He co-authored a study showing that spending time in natural settings makes us more generous and more community-oriented. Another study, this one by Dutch researchers, shows that those who live within 1 kilometer of a park or wooded area suffer lower rates of depression and anxiety than those who don't. But even if we don't live surrounded by trees and greenery, we can always take a walk through them. As healthcare costs spiral out of control, it behooves us to think about our green space in terms of preventive healthcare, said Dr. Catherine Cotrela of the Texas AANDM College of Medicine. This highlights very clearly that our Western notion of body-mind duality is entirely false. The study shows that we are a whole organism, and when we get healthy, that means our body and our mind get healthy. On the flip side, it turns out that sitting is as bad for us as walking is good for us. According to an American Cancer Society study, people with a sitting job are more likely to develop cardiovascular disease than those with standing jobs. This is not a new discovery. A 1950s study of people in similar lines of work showed London bus drivers had a higher incidence of death from cardiovascular disease than bus conductors, and government clerks had a higher incidence than postal workers. The benefits of getting up and walking, of moving, go beyond our bodies. A study led by University of Illinois researchers shows that walking 3 times a week for 40 minutes at one's own natural pace helps combat the effects of aging. and increases brain connectivity and cognitive performance. So it's not just ruminative creative thinking that's enhanced by walking. Our focused, get things done type of thinking is improved in as well. Perhaps in addition to walking meetings, we should consider creating walking classrooms. Though he didn't have the science to back up his beliefs about the benefits of walking, Henry David Thoreau was onto this truth long ago. "Methinks that the moment my legs begin to move, my thoughts begin to flow," he wrote. In her book Wanderlust, author Rebecca Solnit noted the pious connection between the act of walking and how we experience the world. Walking shares with making and working that crucial element of engagement of the body and the mind with the world, she wrote, of knowing the world through the body and the body through the world. This touches on a concept critical in the Japanese aesthetic, including the traditional tea ceremony. The concept of ma, which can be loosely translated as the essential space or interval or gap between things, and the importance of creating and fully experiencing such spaces. So, whether we are just taking a walk without wanting to get anywhere in particular, or whether we are walking toward a destination, walking to connect two places, the space, the interval in between, can be important. It can, in fact, be the point. Except for the point, the still point, there would be no dance, and there is only the dance. T.S. Eliot. Space is substance, as graphic designer Alan Fletcher put it. Cézanne painted and modeled space. Giacometti sculpted by taking the fat off space. Mallarmé conceived poems with absences as well as words. Ralph Richardson asserted that acting lay in pauses. Isaac Stern described music as that little bit between each note, silences which give the form. Walking is one of the ways we move through our world. Language and writing are how we articulate that experience. Words inscribe a text in the same way that a walk inscribes space, writes British author Jeff Nicholson. Writing is one way of making the world our own, and walking is another. To fully experience the world around us, we first have to be able to free ourselves from the distractions that are constantly begging for our attention. Even the supremely focused Thoreau struggled to stay in the moment. I am alarmed when it happens that I have walked a mile into the woods bodily, without getting there in spirit. In my afternoon walk, I would forget all my morning occupations and my obligations to society. But it sometimes happens that I cannot easily shake off the village. The thought of some work will run in my head and I am not where my body is. I am out of my senses. What business have I in the woods if I am thinking of something out of the woods? Shake off the village. What a perfect way of conveying a vitally important and universal human need. Since Thoreau's time, the village has grown exponentially bigger and become more intrusive and seemingly more intimate, giving us the semblance of human connection without any of the real benefits of that connection. Technology has enabled the village to become exceptionally good at not allowing us to shake it off. With the advent of the smartphone, getting away from it all is no longer as easy as simply getting up and walking away. Increasingly, we don't even try to shake off the village. We surrender to a life of distractions, living, as Thoreau put it, much of our lives out of our senses. We walk the city texting and talking and listening to music on our smartphones, disconnected from those around us and from ourselves. Journalist Wayne Curtis calls these hyper-connected individuals the digital dead, shuffling slowly, their eyes affixed to a small screen in their hands. He cites a University of Washington study that focused on a single intersection in Seattle. The study found that 1 in 3 pedestrians was distracted while crossing the street, and in the vast majority of cases, they were distracted by either listening to music or typing or talking on a phone. And not surprisingly, it took those who were texting almost 20% longer to cross the street. Another study found that those texting were 33% slower getting to a planned destination. As Guardian columnist Oliver Burkeman wrote, smartphones have been ubiquitous for years, of course, but much more recently, there seems to have been a shift in social norms. For many people, the unwritten rules of sidewalk choreography now include this. If what I'm reading or watching on my phone is sufficiently interesting to me, it's entirely up to you to get out of my way, just as if I were very frail, or 3 years old, or blind, or a lamppost. It can be a dangerous habit. In December 2013, a tourist in Melbourne fell off a pier and plunged into the sea while checking Facebook on her phone. She still had it in her hand when she was rescued, and she was one of the lucky ones. According to an Ohio State University study, in 2010, more than 1,500 pedestrians were admitted to emergency rooms as a result of accidents involving cell phones or other mobile devices. In trying to lessen the hold of technology on our lives, we need all the help we can get. Some of us are able to switch our devices on and off, go cold turkey for periods of time, or go on periodic digital diets. But not all of us have that kind of willpower. Walking, without our devices or with our devices turned off, is a start. I suspect the greatest mental benefits of walking are explained not by what it is, but by what it isn't, writes Berkman. When you go outside, you cease what you're doing, and stopping trying to achieve something is often key to achieving it. Forcing our brains to process in a new environment can help us to engage more fully. Gregory Burns, author of Iconoclast, a neuroscientist reveals how to think differently, writes that our brain gains new insights from people and new environments, any circumstance in which the brain has a hard time predicting what will come next. So please, walk. It makes us healthier. It enhances cognitive performance from creativity to planning and scheduling, and it helps us to reconnect with our environment, ourselves, and those around us. Furry. Friends with different benefits. There are many different ways of inserting third metric values into our lives. Meditation, long walks, exercise, yoga, reconnecting with family and friends, and make sure to unplug, recharge, and get enough sleep, all will increase some aspect of our well-being and sense of fulfillment. Another way is by being close to animals. A purpose of life is to expand the boundaries of our love, to widen the circle of our concern, to open up rather than shut down, and to expand rather than contract. Every week brings more stories and science about the amazing ways in which pets can open our hearts and enhance our lives. Alan McConnell, professor of psychology at Miami University, writes in Psychology Today that it's well known that our social network is important for our emotional well-being. But that network is not limited to people. According to research from McConnell's lab, pet owners have higher self-esteem, fewer feelings of loneliness, and are more physically fit and socially outgoing than people without pets. In another study involving 97 pet owners, some in the group were made to feel rejected socially. Sounds like high school all over again. Afterward, some in the study were asked to write about their best friends, while others wrote about their pets. What the researchers found was that thinking about a pet provided the same power to recover from the negative feelings of rejection as thinking about a best friend. Interestingly, the studies found no support for the idea that socially isolated people turn to pets as a kind of human replacement, an idea that led to the crazy cat lady cliché. To the contrary, McConnell writes, owners seem to extend their general human social competencies to their pets as well. In other words, those with deep human relationships gain the greatest benefits from having a pet. Like spouses and close friends, pets can become included in the self, the core of our being that forms our perspective. As McConnell put it, they become as much a part of the self as many family members, and end up having a powerful impact on our health and happiness. But the benefits of pets go beyond the everyday. Pets offer an unconditional love that can be very helpful to people with depression, said Ian Cook, psychiatrist and director of UCLA's Depression Research and Clinic Program. They also add a sense of responsibility, regular activity, a set routine, and reliable companionship, which can be an invaluable source of healing. Studies have also found that pet owners have lower blood pressure, a reduced risk of heart disease, and lower levels of stress, all with no side effects other than the occasional chewed furniture leg. Pets can also be a plus in the workplace. A 2012 study published in the International Journal of Workplace Health Management found that in the course of the workday, stress levels decreased for workers who brought in their dogs. The differences in perceived stress between days the dog was present and absent were significant, said Randolph Barker, professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. The employees as a whole had higher job satisfaction than industry norms. Barker also found that the good feelings didn't just occur in pet owners. Employees who didn't have a dog at work often asked those who did if they could take the dog out for a break. Having a dog in the office had a positive effect on the general atmosphere, counteracting stress and making everyone around happier. Pet presence may serve as a low-cost wellness intervention readily available to many organizations, concluded Barker. Today, only 17% of American businesses allow workers to bring their pets to the office, but that 17% includes some of the most innovative companies, Amazon, Zynga, Tumblr, and Google among them. Google takes it so seriously that its pet policy is written into its code of conduct, dog policy. Google's affection for our canine friends is an integral facet of our corporate culture. The role of animals, and especially dogs, as roving ambassadors of goodwill can be seen most clearly in their role as therapy dogs. After the tragic massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, in December 2012, Therapy dogs from all over the country were brought in to help the community, and especially the children of Sandy Hook Elementary School. 6 months later, Newtown held a day of thanks to show its gratitude. 50 dogs and many more owners and residents attended the gathering. One parent explained that her daughter had had a rough time after the shooting, but when she talked about the dogs that she saw every day at school, she lit up. Another young girl and a therapy dog developed an especially moving bond. At a Christmas party for Sandy Hook children just after the shooting, 9-year-old Emma Wisniewski happened upon a therapy dog named Jeffrey, rescued from a New York City shelter and nicknamed the Positively Peaceful Pit Bull. When Emma met Jeffrey, it was love at first sight, and the two were inseparable for the whole party. And since then, they've had regular playdates. It was still a really vulnerable time for her, and she just was comfortable sitting next to Jeffrey, Emma's mother said. He's strong, and I think she just feels safe. Since then, Emma has begun to train her family's dog Jedi, also a rescue dog, as a therapy dog. Emma has a smile that could light the world, and I feel like we used to see that smile a lot more, but it's definitely still there, her mother said. When she's with Jeffrey, she doesn't stop smiling. Animals help us be better humans. Quite often, they show us how to be our best selves. Always in the moment, sticking their noses into everything, literally. They see a world that we take for granted, one we're usually just hurriedly passing through on our way to lives we never quite reach. In her book On Looking, 11 Walks with Expert Eyes, cognitive scientist Alexandra Horowitz writes about seeing the world through a variety of eyes. One set of eyes belongs to her dog, who inspired her to see the spectacle of the ordinary. While the term pet owner implies a hierarchy with humans on top in the relationship, in reality, as John Grogan, author of Marley Me, put it, a person can learn a lot from a dog, even a loopy one like ours. Marley taught me about living each day with unbridled exuberance and joy, about seizing the moment and following your heart. He taught me to appreciate the simple things, a walk in the woods, a fresh snowfall, a nap in a shaft of winter sunlight. And as he grew old and achy, he taught me about optimism in the face of adversity. Mostly, he taught me about friendship and selflessness and, above all else, unwavering loyalty. Novelist Jonathan Carroll put it this way: dogs are minor angels, and I don't mean that facetiously. They love unconditionally, forgive immediately, are the truest of friends, willing to do anything that makes us happy, etc. If we attributed some of those qualities to a person, we would say they are special. If they had all of them, we would call them angelic. But because it's only a dog, we dismiss them as sweet or funny but little more. However, when you think about it, what are the things that we most like in another human being? Many times, those qualities are seen in our dogs every single day. We're just so used to them that we pay no attention. Pets are the unrivaled masters of giving back. The pleasure they take in giving themselves to us is perhaps their greatest lesson. Like our animals, we are wired to connect, to reach out, to love. But unlike them, with us other things get in the way. Jealousy, insecurity, irritation, anger. Pets help us constantly come back to what makes us human. They're a furry version of our best selves. Beyond economic indicators, a true happiness index. Though it may be difficult to measure, the idea that happiness should be part of our national dialogue and purpose is not new. As I mentioned in the introduction, the pursuit of happiness is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence as one of the unalienable rights we are endowed with by our Creator. Efforts in various countries, including France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, to measure the actual well-being of their citizens were the subject of a piece by The Washington Post's Peter Horisky. As he noted, the idea of a broader measure of a country's success beyond economic indicators was memorably articulated by Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. Too much and too long, we seem to have surrendered personal excellence and community values in the mere accumulation of material things. Our gross national product, if we judge America by that, counts air pollution and cigarette advertising, and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. In France, in 2008, then-President Nicolas Sarkozy launched an initiative headed by economists and Nobel laureates Joseph Stiglitz and Amartya Sen to shift emphasis from measuring economic production to measuring people's well-being. David Cameron, now Great Britain's Prime Minister, made the same point at a Google Zeitgeist Europe conference in 2006. It's time we admitted that there's more to life than money, and it's time we focused not just on GDP but on GWB, general well-being. Well-being can't be measured by money or traded in markets. It's about the beauty of our surroundings, the quality of our culture, and above all, the strength of our relationships. 4 years later, he announced that a national well-being survey would be conducted by the Office for National Statistics. To those who say that all this sounds like a distraction from the serious business of government, he said, I say finding out what will really improve lives and acting on it is the serious business of government. The idea of measuring our well-being is gaining ground. The European Union runs a European Quality of Life Survey. The Paris-headquartered Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has a Better Life Index. It declared Australia the world's happiest industrialized country in 2011, 2012, and 2013. And the United Nations commissioned a World Happiness Report, which found that Scandinavian countries were the happiest, and that the least happy countries were in Africa. The director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, Jeffrey Sachs, who edits the UN report, said, there is now a rising worldwide demand that policy be more closely aligned with what really matters to people as they themselves characterize their well-being. And in 2011, the National Academies convened a panel that includes Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman to come up with a way to measure subjective well-being. In fact, the idea of measuring our well-being is so widespread that last year The Economist declared that the happiness industry was one of the more surprising industries to have taken off during the current period of economic downturn. I completely support any effort to show that we're more than just our marginal contribution to our bank accounts, the bottom line of our employers, or the gross national product of our countries. But to truly measure our state of happiness and well-being, it's important to look at the whole picture. In the United Kingdom, for instance, the Office for National Statistics based its conclusions entirely on a survey in which they asked around 165,000 people over the age of 16 a few questions about how satisfied they were with their lives on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being not at all and 10 being completely. Based on this methodology, the Office for National Statistics found that happiness in the United Kingdom had climbed from 7.41 in April 2012 to 7.45 in March 2013. But is a 0.04 increase really a meaningful difference? One solid enough to conclude that happiness in Britain is on the rise, as some papers trumpeted? Moreover, if you are unhappy, answering survey questions about how satisfied you are with your life might not be high on your to-do list. And indeed, about half of the people approached refused to participate. This is just one illustration of the danger of drawing too many conclusions from too little data. It's pretty easy to find real data for the United Kingdom that completely contradict the results of the happiness index. In 2011, there were more than 45 million prescriptions written for antidepressants, up 9% from the previous year, and the National Health Service spent more than £270 million on antidepressants, a 23% increase from 2010. So, while the idea behind conducting happiness surveys is worthwhile, it should be broadened to include as much data as possible. A more comprehensive happiness index would include not only data such as the use of antidepressants and sleeping pills, but also alcoholism rates, suicide rates, the incidence of illnesses linked to stress, including diabetes and high blood pressure, healthcare spending for stress-related illnesses, the percentage of employers offering wellness programs and flexible work schedules, and the number of workdays lost to stress. Nonetheless, it is significant that so many leaders finally recognize that the well-being of their citizens depends on more than just a country's quarterly growth rate, as important as that is, especially if this leads to policy changes from job creation to family leave that reduce stress and improve well-being. At the personal level, there are 3 simple steps each one of us can take that can have dramatic effects on our well-being. 1. Unless you are one of the wise few who already gets all the rest you need, you have an opportunity to immediately improve your health, creativity, productivity, and sense of well-being. Start by getting just 30 minutes more sleep than you are getting now. The easiest way is to go to bed earlier, but you could also take a short nap during the day, or a combination of both. 2. Move your body. Walk, run, stretch, do yoga, dance, just move. Anytime. 3. Introduce 5 minutes of meditation into your day. Eventually, you can build up to 15 or 20 minutes a day or more, but even just a few minutes will open the door to creating a new habit. and all the many proven benefits it brings. War. And here are some simple steps to get you started meditating. 1. Choose a reasonably quiet place to begin your practice and select a time when you will not be interrupted. 2. Relax your body. If you would like to close your eyes, do so. Allow yourself to take deep, comfortable breaths, gently noticing the rhythm of your inhalation and exhalation. 3. Let your breathing be full. Bring your attention to the air coming in your nostrils, filling up your abdomen, and then releasing. Gently and without effort, observe your breath flowing in and out. 4. When thoughts come in, simply observe them and gently nudge your attention back to the breath. Meditation is not about stopping thoughts, but recognizing that we are more than our thoughts and our feelings. You can imagine the thoughts as clouds passing through the sky. If you find yourself judging your thoughts or feelings, simply bring yourself back to the awareness of the breath. 5. Some people find it helpful to have a special or sacred word or phrase that they use to bring their awareness back to the breath. Examples include Om, Hu, peace, thank you, grace, love, and calm. You can think of that word each time you inhale, or use it as your reminder word if your mind starts to wander. 6. It is really important not to make your meditation practice one more thing you stress about. In fact, reducing stress is one of the major benefits of meditation, together with increased intuition, creativity, compassion, and peace. For more support and guidance, there are many meditation tools in Appendix B to help you start or deepen your practice.